Thor Ultimate ATV. Tremble before the God of Thunder. The Thor Ultimate ATV brings all the power and the fury of the ancient Norse god to your very fingertips.
Dude.
Ironically, this vehicle was created by Ukrainians with no relationship to the Nordic people. But after over 2 years of tweaking and modification, this vehicle well lived up to its name.
After over 2 years of tweaking
Inception.
It's powered by a turbo diesel General Motors with 200 horsepower, gearbox, automatic 6-speed ASIN, built with a completely monocoque lightweight fiberglass body, and the ability to traverse over water without fear of rust. The Thor comfortably seats up to...
Look at how short the wheelbase is on that thing, man.
Isn't that crazy?
Once you start spinning down the side of a mountain, how would you stop? Wow. I guess those tires are how you'd stop.
More interested in how fast it runs, the Thor's been demonstrated to reach a maximum speed of 46
I feel like we should just have a video, just always
5 miles per hour.
pipe video.
I'm not so sure I think we just turn the sound down and just keep rolling.
Only 8.
Yeah, I'm thinking we just have a kite video.
The rest of it
Always there.
I like it. We can move it around, you know. I can. Let's see. What else can I do
Maybe
here?
people jump on that.
Put that up there. We can do stuff like this. No, we can't. Okay, interesting.
That's not that bad.
Ripsaw was designed at How and
That's
How
pretty cool.
Technologies to be
That's even better.
cutting edge.
Where are you guys?
On Earth.
I would have to then go like this, maybe. Nope, that's not going to work.
Amazing 1,500 horsepower and an
I like that. There you
horsepower.
Boom.
That's awesome. Just turn off.
1,500 horsepower, 7,000 pound personal tank.
Okay, does that thing run on gas, diesel, electric? What's going on?
Saw EV3 F1.
I'm guessing it's gas by the tailpipe flames we just saw.
Vehicle, a total weight of 7,750 pounds and the ability to raise its suspension up to 16 inches.
Oh.
Did that say 7,000 pounds?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's heavy.
Wow.
An air-suspended cockpit with a 5-point racing harness completes the extreme look, while the price, which has been noted as starting from $500,000, makes sure that only the most extreme can drive this vehicle.
Only 500,000. Let's all
for just 500,000, you too can have one.
The Hum Rider.
This one's funny.
Don't be fooled by the relatively docile name. The Hum Rider is a sleek and powerful beast of a machine. It's built like a regular car, like a standard Jeep Cherokee wagon SUV.
I can't look away. This is so great.
Isn't it great?
This would be perfect in Atlanta.
It lifts up the body of the car, widens the wheelbase, and allows
I'm pretty sure
you
this has to be illegal.
competition.
What?
That would upset some people.
You would get shot under the car.
Engineer Scott Beverly, who designed the Hum Rider with more than 300 feet of hydraulic lines, powering a myriad of vehicular functions.
Oh yeah, hydraulics never go bad,
It makes use of a gas-powered Honda generator,
especially when they are your suspension system.
providing the 900 pounds of pressure that power the vehicle.
The bearings.
Yeah, the wheel bearings.
Extended, the Hum Rider regular vehicles with 4
It's a lot of pressure, man.
Look at the plebeian cars.
What if you don't make the
Ride
clearance?
over traffic jam to the rest you deserve.
Well, what if that happens?
I think it's just a concept.
That's a terrible concept.
I think that was the Blue Meanie narrating. You guys remember the Blue Meanie? He's in a hearing ad. He's in a hearing aid ad now, the Blue Meanie. He narrated Monster Garage, I think he narrated.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He was a wrestler for a while, but he was much more known for his announcing. He has one of those just great voices.
Mr. Clean with the question of tactics there. What if I'm underneath and I turn? Here we go. Now we've got
what if I open my door? What if
the
I
insurance system is involved now? Here we go.
Yeah. There have been several concepts like that. There was a concept for commuter trains that were just naturally 20 feet tall with a 15-foot clearance, and they just drive down the lines of the interstate, and then how do you change lanes? And there's a lot of questions. It's probably better to just lay tracks next to the highway, for example Denver did, and just make it 2 separate systems.
Yeah, they don't seem to be able to finish the whole thing, but yes, it works pretty good.
Motorcycles can't split lanes except for California, as far as I know.
They
It's
do in
not legal.
Colorado, but I think it's all Californians who've
It's
moved
not-
here who still do
Yeah.
it.
I don't believe it's legal in Kansas to split lanes on a motorcycle.
It's straight up, man. They don't even. In fact, it's speed up. It's just go. I can't believe
Yeah.
the things I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, people just do those stupid last minute lane changes at 5 miles an hour. Like, I don't know how it just seems to me you're asking to get killed. But
Zach sees that every day if he's on the road.
yeah, lane splitting's
He's
not
probably
legal
doing
in all states. Yeah, he probably is a lane splitter.
He's probably doing it. He's probably got a crotch rocket, and he's just laying it down.
Full wheelie, girlfriend on the back, lane splitting through traffic. That seems like something Zach would do.
I mean,
It's probably Mr. Clean because of his super clean street bike.
there it is.
That seems likely.
Well, guys, today's a weird day. Today, there's a lot of successes, and we're going to talk about them today, but there's a weird sort of element to this whole thing. A year ago today, which would have been a Wednesday last year, of course, I had a midweek Lenten church service that ended about 8:00 that night. And I knew throughout the day what had been happening, and I had been watching stuff the week before, and we all were. And I called it at the end of the church service. I said, guys, I think this is the last time we're going to see each other for a long time. And then the next day, our leadership in the church and leadership in the NBA and all these other places were like, we're shutting her down. And it took us to this time. But that's a year ago today, this week. And everything we're doing and talking about has just been this, again, the rug of reality just got pulled up and thrown down, and we all just got thrown for a bit. And we're still in it, but that's where we are. So that's a framing of this time. And there's a lot of successes and a lot of things to be thankful for, but also a lot. And I think Joe Biden's speech tonight was so absolutely on point. I don't know if we want to take a look at that a little bit later, but it needs to be said, and then we can move on. So there, it's been said.
I agree. I thought his speech was very good. Just think if we'd started this way, just think if we'd started with reality and this is going to be hard and we need to buckle down and we need to work together. If we'd started that way, we'd be in a different place now. But I thought his message was really good. There's been a lot of CDC announcements saying things like, if everybody's vaccinated, they can congregate in small groups without masks. And I felt that was a little aggressive. So I like the fact that he came out and sort of said, it's not, we got to keep our eye on the ball, but we're getting there. He basically said by the end of May, I don't know if we want to talk too much about it right now, but he basically said by the end of May, every adult in America will be able to schedule a vaccination, which was a bit of a...
By the 1st of May, we'll be able to be in line.
Oh, was it 1st of May be able to get in line?
1st of May.
Okay, either way, by May, be able to make an appointment, which of course could be through July or something, but at least everyone have a formal plan in May. So that was bold. That was good.
Yeah.
And clear leadership with some clear goals and some, great leadership. I mean, it's just a beautiful picture of leadership, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
It was a really good speech, but he's always really good at these type of speeches because he's a very heartful person and he's calm and he has that old grandfather feel. Like he's just like knowledgeable and he's just like everything will be okay, which is kind of like exactly what we need. No
doubt.
I feel like the news is doing a lot of revisional history. I'm starting to hear a lot of remember when Biden came out with his goal of 100,000 shots, and everybody was questioning it at first.
100 million.
100 million. Now they're saying, "Oh, that goal was too low." I called it right off the bat. Said that they set a goal that they can reach.
Right.
So you don't set goals like the last guy where he was saying, "Oh, 100 million coming out tomorrow." Well, not tomorrow, but next week. And you set goals that you can hit and then you can exceed. So that way it looks better. It's just, that's the best way to do it. And the funny thing is we do that as normal people all the time. I mean, how many times do you meet a person that sets outrageous goals and then only hits 10% of them? And you're like, wait a minute, you're the one that set the goal. Like, I don't like when I work with people or if you get a contractor and you tell them, what do you need? How much time do you need? You tell me, I'll work around your schedule. They set a goal of 2 weeks, and then it's 3 months. That's more annoying than them going, listen, I'm a little running behind. Let's do 3 months. I'm going to work. And if that guy says 3 months and he finishes in 2 months, you're the happy person. That's how we run our life. We want that guy. We don't want the guy that says 100 million in the next month and then no vaccine shots at all. That's bad. And it also doesn't allow us to set any expectations or any plans.
Yeah, in an organization, the worst is the guy who volunteers to lead everything and then he never delivers anything. Well, so instead of providing anything, they just take the leadership role and then completely fail. Which I would say Trump wasn't even that. Trump was like the guy brainstorming at the side. Well, maybe we could do X, Y, Z, and then just like the press conference is over.
Did you guys notice tonight? Did you guys notice tonight how not one time in the entire speech anyone was said that this was the best of anything or that this is the greatest? Yeah. Or I mean, he did. I guess Joe Biden did say this is the biggest, wartime footing, the biggest operation we've ever done, and the greatest losses we've ever had because of mismanagement. But there wasn't that sort of sociopathic. Nobody has done this more than me. I mean, he talked about brokering some incredible deals. This idea that Johnson & Johnson and Merck are working together and that Merck is basically they didn't get theirs in and they lost the race, and yet they can be part of the winning approach. That is a broker of a deal that Donald Trump never could come close to.
The closest thing, I thought the closest thing to shade he really threw was he said, we're working to help red state and blue state. In other words, he intentionally took time to say the right thing versus attacking Trump for the wrong thing or being partisan. So I thought the whole speech was really, really good. He hit on unity. He hit on we need to reduce the anti-Asian hate, which I guess I'm still just blown away that that's even happening. I mean,
absolutely needs to be said.
Talk about disappointing. I mean, if anybody thinks that a Chinese American has anything to do with COVID, I mean, come on. I mean, that's just ridiculous. My best friend in high school, we're still in touch. We unfortunately live quite a ways apart. Was from Taiwan. He married a woman from mainland China. They've both been in this country for 30 years, and they have nothing to do with coronavirus or the Chinese government. Or if anything, you could argue they're on our side because they left China. I mean, why would you be mad at a Chinese person who's in America about something that happened in China? I mean, it's just people are just obviously super ignorant.
Dude, it's all over and it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it does.
And I never understood that concept either as an immigrant. Why that is if I am here and I'm a citizen, then you should celebrate me, not go against. Like, I chose to be here. I'm not there.
Right.
I understand, shooting your shot against people that are not here.
Okay. All right. Here. So let's go down a path that needs to be gone down. We've got a lot of work to do, and we will get to some of it. There's no order to this thing tonight, but I wanted to bring this up from all our different geographical areas from where we're at. However many it is, 17,000, 117,000, 1,017,000 kids that come to our border who are refugees need to be let in the front door, housed, helped, hospitalized, and ready to go. We need an open policy in this country. We need more immigrants in this country. I think we have to address, this is my opinion, so I'm throwing this out there. I hope I get some heat for this because I'm just trying to get it going. But I believe that we are underpopulated, and I think we need to open it up. And that is one of the fastest ways to address the Mike Pompeo philosophy that is that the Americanness of manifest destiny is still the prevailing Americanness, and that the Americanness of Martin Luther King and others in inclusion and the greatness of diversity and all that is a different kind of greatness. And so I think, why not lean into this immigration thing and really focus on a larger swath than just immigration. It's also racism, it's capitalism, it's a lot of different things. But I think that's got to be next on the horizon, and I just want to kick it off with that.
Yeah, I think it's critically important to point out that the Biden administration does not separate children from parents. So what we have here is an influx of unaccompanied minors entering the country. So it's a problem. I mean, it's not a Biden thing or a Trump thing. It's there's been increased numbers of minors enter the country, and so once they're here, you have to protect them while they're in your custody, and ideally get them put onto sponsors that can give them more direct and better protection in a home-based environment and education and all that stuff. So yeah, it's definitely a huge issue, but I think it's critically important to point out that these are not children being separated from their parents. They're children in the country on their own. So that's a key part of it. So it's a really tough issue because, I mean, an adult, you can probably, give a bus pass and a pat on the back and be like, well, you're supposed to be in court in 30 days. But a child, in America, you can't legally just tell a child like, good luck, see you in 30 days. We have to keep a chain of custody and make sure they're protected. So I'm sure it's organizationally and administratively very difficult.
Yep.
How do I put this?
Here we go.
I am pro immigration, and I am very pro protecting children and everything to that. My only issue is that there is no perfect way to do this cleanly. And what I mean by that is when you have a whole bunch of children traveling without their parents, and then they go into the U.S. government facilities, and there's a lot of them, it's not going to be, it's very hard to make a very clean and perfect process, which means you're setting yourself up politically for a mess because you can't afford to make little homes for each one of these children. You have to have, they have to sleep somewhere. They're not going to be sleeping in homes. They're going to be sleeping in trailers. There's going to be X amount of them in that trailer, and there's going to be pictures. It can get very, it's a messy process. And I don't think this country right now, after Trump, the last guy, is ready to just start receiving a whole bunch of children and having it to the liking of what they want to treat children like. So it's going to be a tough battle because I don't think it's perfect. And even the Democrats right now are seeing all these kids come in. There's not enough space for them. They have to share. Of course, they're not in cages, but again, they're not in perfect conditions. And we have to understand that I don't think we're ready for perfect conditions for them. So we have to have some kind of a policy where these kids are coming in and the government process is, okay, we'll take them in. We'll put them into a government system. Then we'll take them from another government system and put them in a government home and on and on and on. I don't think that's the solution. I mean, if there's kids coming in without parents, maybe line them up with adoption or something like that. Think outside the box. But I'm worried.
I guess that's kind of what I was thinking too, is that you'd make it a priority, even a national priority, or make some sort of an incentive program to do it, but by really shifting the whole ethos of how we're going to address. And I think Zach has said several important comments over here, but one of them is it's all about decriminalizing the border. And I think that is an approach that really needs to be addressed, in that what you're saying, Ace, is absolutely true. There are all these problems. You can't just wash it away, because currently to just take them in basically moves us into institutional housing, whether that's a jail or whether it's a shed or whatever it is. It institutionalizes them. And so to have a different way of bringing them in. But the reason that we're institutionalizing them is because we have a criminalization of the border approach. We don't have an open approach. We have a really bunch of shitty policies that we're related with in Middle or in Central American countries that are allowing gangs to run rampant, governments to not be able to function, and all sorts of other reasons. A lot of drug trade to support and travel trade to keep a lot of things disparity down there. And so these kids are running, and we have to be the place they can run to, or it's another attack on democracy, in my opinion, to not be willing to take more people in. I know that may not be a popular approach. It's fine.
My issue is with words like decriminalizing the border is that's really not that much different than defunding the police. Because when you say
okay, fair enough,
because you're saying that This country has no borders. Anybody can just go walk in, walk out. We don't know where they're at. And I think there should be a better system. We should have a really robust immigration system where people can get in line, they can get into a system so we know when they're coming, we know who they are, and it's a much more robust system. On top of that, we have got to figure out, which goes against completely about what the last guy wants, is we need to fix these southern borders in their own countries so they don't have to come here all the time. We'll figure out what's happening with Honduras. I've always said, why do we do all this business with China, which is overseas, when we have next door? Why aren't we building more of our plants next door and funding these? It would be much cheaper and it would be more civilized. We can have a partner that's right next door building the same stuff they build in China. Why not?
I could be wrong, but first of all, I don't think minors are being charged with crimes for crossing the border. Maybe I'm wrong, but
they're not. But they're being put into those similar facilities, which are
where would they go?
It's my understanding. You gather them up, right? You find them on the border. Border Patrol's gathering them up. I'm sure checking their pockets, making sure they're not smuggling drugs, make sure they're not. I don't know. I'm sure they're interviewing them to figure out what's going on, and they're of course saying, "Yeah, I walked here from Honduras because my parents were killed by a gang or whatever." And they say, "Okay, the member of the Biden administration was on TV today saying we're looking to find them sponsors or their family members here in the country and get them there." So I believe we all agree. I mean, that they shouldn't be charged with crimes. They should be sent to live with people that preferably are their family, or if not their family, people that are sponsoring them, that support them. And while we're talking about large numbers, like 3,000-4,000, it's not really a huge number of people compared to 360 million Americans. I mean, in other words, I'd like to think there's places for these children to be placed. So I guess the real problem is the pace isn't fast enough. We're not processing them fast enough, so we have enough in the queue that we're detaining them. And I agree with what Ace said. I mean, I'll be honest. I worked at a homeless shelter for a while. Like, minors are a serious problem. Like, we couldn't even house minors because there's just so much liability of having a minor around, because a minor can just simply accuse an adult staff member of something and you're in legal troubles for years. Minors just create a whole bunch of problems. And of course they have to be protected too. I mean, not just the liability problem, but the fact that they're also children and can be preyed upon. So, I mean, I'd put a bow on it to say, I think we need to act quickly. We need to find these kids homes so that they're housed by the state as short as possible. But of course they also need to be safe homes so that we don't just throw them into some house where the right, as you know, will accuse us of releasing these children to human traffickers as they have in the past. So, obviously, that will unfortunately happen if you dispense 2,000 kids to 2,000 sponsors. Unfortunately, some of those kids will end up in distress. But, obviously we need to take action, do our due diligence, and get these kids into regular homes as fast as possible. So I think we'd all agree. As far as specific facilities that we gave Trump crap for, I don't understand necessarily the fear of a specific facility. If our practices are correct, if we're trying to do the right thing, if we're not separating kids from their parents, I don't care if it was the Donald Trump child prison and now we're using it to process kids through to foster families. I don't care what the name of the facility was. As long as we're doing the right thing, I don't have any fear of a specific facility. And as a government, we can't just walk away from buildings because they have a bad reputation. My two cents on that. But I think we're all headed the same way. These are children. They're seeking asylum. The reason they're unaccompanied is because there's probably been some serious tragedy and violence in their past, and we should give them asylum. And I agree completely with what you say, Marty. The right wants to sell this zero-sum game, and I don't need to go into it, of course, but like the game Monopoly, where there's a drawer of money and, you're all going to basically split it. That's not the way America is. The more people we have, the more people are paying taxes and helping us build roads and plant crops on land that wasn't being planted before. And, there's large expanses. I mean, Colorado's still 40% BLM or something. I mean, there's public land everywhere that just, it's public land because no one wants to sign a lease and own it and take care of it. So there's lots of opportunity in America for lots of people to be here, and we can, and that's without even developing any complex models of next, the next generation of living style, where you have gardens on rooftops, or, where you really start to multiply and get really good at it, like say China probably is. So yeah, I think there's a ton of opportunity in America. And I think there's plenty of room for unaccompanied minors. At some point, you have to set numerical limits. I would think we probably can't say we're completely open to every unaccompanied minor. I mean, I think at some point the really question might also become, what can we do to help stabilize some of these South American countries? No one likes us occupying anything, but why are there countries where gangs are roving the streets and everyone's scared? Like, there's obviously some sort of major drug control problem or a failed government. So, it's got to be multi-pronged. And as Luke would point out, as the environment continues to change, I think it was Luke brought this up first time in here, but as the environment continues to change and get hotter, larger parts of South America are going to be uninhabitable. Well, Central America, South America's got cold parts too, but more and more of Central America may become uninhabitable. So when you have some of these desertous, I'm thinking of like southern Mexico, and a lot of it's jungle, like Nicaragua's all jungly. But anyway, there's going to be places where people can't even live. And so those people are going to have to go somewhere, and they're going to tend to want to walk north. That's what I would do if it was too hot. So theoretically, we could be dealing with very large influxes of people. And so, yeah, we need to have plans.
We spend a ton of money in other countries now. So we can prevent them from, we spend a lot of money in Middle East. I just never understood why we don't spend more money to our neighbors that directly affect us. I don't understand why that's not been put in. I'm just not a fan of this no border policy. And that's just, I just don't like that. I mean, if I don't know much about Canada, but I'm pretty sure I can't just walk into Canada or Mexico.
It used to be pretty easy, man. I mean, you used to be able to go up and show them your license, and we had a very friendly relationship.
Well, what if you didn't? What if you just hopped across a border where they didn't see you?
It wasn't that they didn't see. I mean, you could do that in North Dakota, I suppose. You could probably find spots where you could just run over.
What about Mexico? Can you just walk into Mexico?
There's a few. Yes, there are places.
I mean, we have to have a policy where we have everybody understands, hey, if you want to enter this country, you have to go through this process. I mean, my parents went through a process, and because we did the process correctly, that process should be opened up much easier. We were given certain things to make sure that we're successful. I just don't think you're going to be as successful if you sneak into the country and you always have to hide. You're never going to be successful in this country, and it's also not helpful for this country because you're not voting. You're paying taxes in a weird function. When you're down, the government can't really help you. There's no calculation for you because of the census. It breaks up a whole bunch of systems when we force people into coming here and hiding versus opening it up and having a good system where people go, hey, yeah, I can sneak in and hide, but I won't get the benefits that I can get by coming in a proper route. Now, of course, the Democrats and everybody on here will say, yeah, but the line is probably 10 years. That's the problem.
Right.
Make that line. We can make that line move and qualify and disqualify people much quicker.
All right, I'm going to do this. Zach sent this in. I haven't read this. Let's do it together. How does that sound? This is from the ACLU.
I have a feeling I know the punchline of this story. I was just going to add to what Ace said, by the way. When you're here hiding and you have no legal status, you can also, of course, be victimized. You can be human trafficked. You can be slave labor. By slave labor, you could be dramatically underpaid. You could be getting paid $10 a day or $5 a day because you have no grounds to complain.
When you get robbed.
And by the way, that's what sanctuary cities were. Was they basically said, if we get called to a place and nobody's a citizen, we're still just going to treat the situation as address who's the criminal and attack the crime, not become immigration officers. So when people talk about sanctuary cities, what they're talking about is not showing up to a domestic violence situation and deporting everyone, which of course would then de-incentivize a woman to call domestic violence and therefore would increase domestic violence. So there's a whole circle there too. I'd wanted to bring up real quick.
Okay. I'm going to read this. And then Zach, you need to be punishing us with points alongside while I'm reading this. Okay. And then I will look up, but I can't see any of you because I've got this thing on full screen. So I'm just going to plow through this. That's our plan. Here we go. ACLU statement on Biden's refusal to address diversity visas. Okay, hold on. I'm just gonna be as dumb as I am. What are we talking about here?
Is this the whole opening? Is this the Muslim unban?
I think, yeah. I think we should just start reading. Let's just assume it carries itself. I don't want to.
Damn it! I want Zach to be, feeding us here. This is critical.
Oh, okay.
Zach, feed us.
All right, here we go.
All right.
The Biden administration announced that it will not issue visas to diversity visa applicants from fiscal year 2017 to 20 who were denied their visas under the Trump administration Muslim bans, which ultimately targeted a number of Africans. President Biden, when we rescinded the Muslim ban, ordered a State Department report on how to address Trump's rampant denials of immigrant visas, including diversity visas under his discriminatory bans. So he didn't go back in time. Okay. It makes sense. Today's announcement offers limited relief to a subset of people injured by the Muslim ban, but does not do anything for diversity visa applicants, specifically non-diversity visa applicants whose applications were refused on or after January 20th, 2020, due to the Trump Muslim bans, may dispute their rejections without resubmitting their forms. While President Biden is right to call the Muslim ban a stain on our national conscience, he has failed to help so many who have harmed by it. The opportunity to win a diversity visa is a rare and life-changing opportunity that was snatched away from thousands of people because President Trump's hatred and discrimination. Instead of restoring this opportunity, President Biden just dusted off Trump's closed sign and locked the door behind him. This decision threatens to forever prevent thousands of Black and brown immigrants who meet all of the legal requirements to immigrate to the United States from doing so. Okay. This is a huge injustice, and I thank you for the point out, Zach, perpetuating the effects of the discriminatory ban. Although Biden made the Muslim ban recession a day one priority, that alone is not enough. Today, he cemented Trump's legacy of harm.
Yeah, it has the punchline I thought it did.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. That's what it was. I kind of guessed it, right?
So he's not gonna make up call for Trump. Trump blocked visas from 2017 to 2020, and Biden's saying, I'm not going to go back and accept all those applications.
Well, they can.
Sorry, I don't. I mean, the ACLU, of course, is going to comment on it. Good call out. But I don't think it's Biden's job to go back and reprocess a bunch of diversity visa applications.
But it does get to something.
I would hope he reopens back to what should have been. But I don't think he has to go back and make up for the Trump administration. I don't know.
So I'm going to push the ball a little further.
Elections have consequences. They elected Trump. Trump blocked a bunch of Muslims. I mean, that sucks. But Biden should make it right as far as continuing the proper plan. But I don't think we can expect Biden to go back and make up for everything Trump did for 4 years.
What if
my 2 cents?
What if the immigration bill has a reparations package in it?
Reparations for who?
Speaking exactly to the point that you're saying, that instead of, and I'm going against what you're saying, I'm saying that what if we address racism and expense and go back in time with our immigration package and say, let's deal with this racial border issue. Let's learn how to be friends with our neighbors. Let's make priority to put high standards on who can come, but change your posture back to the idea of give me you're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses yearning to break free. Trump literally tried to end that. And I think we have to reestablish ourselves as being the good guys in the relationship if we can. And then by doing that, saying, all right, and also let's deal with our immigration / potentially major racial issue stuff in the same large package, new boundaries, new America conversation. That's where my head is that you need to bite bigger when you're getting into this stuff, because if you just go into immigration, we'll end up talking about minutia detail in El Paso.
Yeah.
It's got to be bigger than that. It's a cultural thing.
So, yeah, I understand. I kind of guessed what it was. The problem with that, and I'm sure there's another article, I don't generally like articles or I'd never like articles like that, because one thing that was missing in that article is I like math. There was no numbers.
Yeah.
which kind of skews the whole. I don't know how many people are we talking about. We also, another thing that was missing there is we don't know what the last guy, I almost called, what the last guy did with the system. So they're saying, applications were sent, but that could have been 3-4 years ago. Do we know if we still have the applications? We don't know what the last guy did with their applications. They could be gone. Right. They might have to be resubmitted.
Is that person still seeking to be a college student?
I don't know. It just makes no sense. I understand that the ACLU would like, and Zach, they go, well, everybody that Trump denied, they should just get their visas. They should be good to go. But we don't know the back end system of, do we still have their paperwork? Do we have their background check? What do we do? How many people? Where are they coming from? With COVID restrictions, there's a lot of things missing in that statement, and it's kind of unfair for us to go, oh, Biden reneged, because there's no information in there at all. I just have to guess.
No, I don't think the ACLU having a beef with Joe Biden is politically damaging.
No, because they have beefs with everybody. That's
their job is to beef with all of us.
Protect the minority, and whenever they see injustice, they do it. But the ACLU also doesn't make policies, and they're also not a government figure. They don't have government systems. They don't know all the ins and outs in government. That's Joe Biden's and his administration job. And I'm sure he went to his administration guy, and the guy said, yeah, we don't have any visas. They deleted all of them. They need to resend them all back in so we can process them. It just makes sense that just like any company that gets bought out, this is not really that much different. They don't just go, well, all the employees the other guy didn't hire, we'll just hire them automatically.
I'm not even sure.
I would think they would need to re-interview.
Well, I'll just say this, pulling back, I think to clarify even further, I don't think Joe Biden having a beef with a lefty scuttlebutt right now, or scuffle. I don't think having lefty scuffles is going to bother at all, because I want to talk about this. 75% of Americans love this COVID-19 package that just got passed. Before they get their money. And, yeah, good point. Very good point. And how many Republicans was it? Was it 41%, 44%, something like that? Maybe more. I'm not sure. But Republicans are in favor of this bill. And so where we are right now, and I wanted to sort of just lift up a couple of things. First of all, this never happens in politics, to have this much support for something that the government is doing. Likewise, when you're in this particular spot, the media has so much less influence right now. The things that they're arguing about are so mundane. I haven't watched it. My consumption of corporate media is because they don't have anything right now. And I think they're all probably still covering for the amount of trouble that Trump is really in right now. Because I think his life is changing fast and we just aren't seeing it. And this Georgia thing is absolutely blowing the doors open. So they don't have anything to talk about right now. And it's tough to talk about success when your entire demeanor and position has always been the outcast or the defeated, and so right now is a time where Joe Biden did a great job tonight. He came out and named what he did, took the credit for it, and gave the credit to who it needs to go to, which is a lot of condolences and sadness and realization of the mammoth impact that this thing has had on us, and then said, okay, and here's the plan. And you're in. You and I are each in on this thing. And that's such good leadership. Yep. I mentioned this last week or on Sunday night, Ace, about the idea that in good leadership asks both the leader and the followers to grow and strain and go forth. And in this Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of leadership, it's the study hall teacher that let everybody get by with murder in class. And that's what the Republicans call a leader, is someone who hates order and hates respect and then just lets you do what you want. And so we've got a new brand of leadership, and it feels good. Feels healthy.
It does.
I don't know if you've talked about the bill, but I mean, the bill is one thing that just keeps on popping into my head, and I just can't get it out. Is I'm seeing all this money. Yeah, I love that. Isn't that perfect? So that's what they should put on that check.
Yep.
But I'm seeing all this money given to people that are actually in need, and a lot of it life-changing money.
Yep.
If you are in the poverty and you get $10,000-$12,000, it will change your life. You can find now. It is your responsibility to do the right thing with it. That's not the government's job. The government is trying to prop you up because you've been down. And what confuses me the most is this bill is smaller than the CARES Act. And I'm confused. Where the hell did all that money go? Because I remember seeing all this money go to, I don't remember people of middle class or lower or poverty level getting $10,000, $11,000. Where the hell did the other money go?
Yep.
Like, it's amazing that there was more money in that package, and they went to shenanigans. They got stolen from underneath us.
Yep.
And one thing, just mark my words, this is going to happen in the next couple of weeks as these checks are going to start coming out. The word that the Republicans are going to start spinning is, oh, the higher middle class are not getting their checks. How dare the Biden? Like, the people that don't need the money are not getting the money. Like,
right.
That's what the Republican Party has. I've always been kind of confused on who their core clientele is, because it's very confusing, because they're mostly super corporate, super billionaire, but then they don't like the tech industry, which cuts them out of some of the corporate. And then they have weird patches of people, and it seems like all the people that vote are voting against their own interests because their party doesn't really do anything to help their people. Aren't they supposed to be the class to help working class? Well, theoretically, both parties should help the working class, but that doesn't really happen.
I think it is important to point out though that the PPP did have corruption, of course, just like any federal program.
And we still don't know that corruption.
But I will say, when we talk about where did all that money go, I mean, my wife's practice did PPP, and they used it to pay staff that wasn't working because the office was closed.
The PPP was only like a third of the CARES Act. But
the point is, a lot of that money turned into wages. And so it wasn't checks from the federal government. It was wages from employers, but it was funded by the government. So, I mean, I'm just trying to say, just because checks weren't written directly to citizens doesn't mean that a lot of money didn't make it down to citizens. But
I agree with you. But
obviously, where it all went is very important.
Like $1.5-1.6 trillion that I'm still confused where it went, because
that's fair.
This stimulus, this act, America's First. I keep on forgetting what's called. This stimulus package.
It's not America First,
or it's America Heals Act. That's
America. Let's just call it the America Heals Act.
America Heals Act #1. There we go.
This stimulus package has PPP in it as well. In fact, the weird part is most of the stuff that's in this was in the CARES Act, and it's just what they did is they lowered the threshold of who can get it, and then they gave more to people that needed more. So the CARES Act went. First of all, the CARES Act.
Well, it's also a complete economic philosophy change.
The American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. But it's a complete philosophy change. It's the idea that, I mean, it's from trickle down to bottom up. And this is the first time I've been watching Joe Biden and Tom Harkin and Dick Gephardt and Dick Durbin and all these old timers, man. They were all in that same class in 1988 when they were running for president against Herbert Walker Bush and Bob Dole. And I remember seeing those guys, and they were talking about this then. They were talking about a bottom-up approach. Bill Clinton came in, and he absolutely floored the Democratic Party by agreeing with supply-side economics. He agreed with trickle-down economics, and he corporatized the Democratic Party like never before. George W. Bush was able to come in with his swagger when America wanted it, and then stole that thing from a nerdy Gore. Then we went and got Obama, who comes in and then decides for the first time in those 30 years to actually implement some of these things in the stimulus package one that he did right as soon as he came in and all hell was breaking loose. And he thought at the time that he was going to get another one real quick. He thought the first one would go through and then they would reassess it, be real responsible and transparent was what he was trying to push. And then, they never gave him another chance. Instead, they gave him half a loaf and said, oh, your economic philosophy doesn't work. And then we lost with Mitch McConnell for the rest of the time until now, until today, when that thing is signed, where the first time since 88, Joe Biden has been pushing this kind of philosophy, as have others, where we actually are going to watch an economic philosophy change in this country, and we're going to watch something happen we haven't seen before. It's going to be amazing. Some are saying that it could overheat the economy. It's going to be so good for America. The fucking naysayer Republicans are like, boy, this is just not good. You're going to overheat the economy. Really? After a pandemic? During a pandemic, because we're still in it? Good.
Well, you also have, there's also a huge section of people that are on their last, they're this close from being homeless because they haven't been paying rent, they can't get kicked out, and everything is about to crash. If you don't help those people, and I know people, like personally, that haven't paid rent for 3-4 months, they don't have a job yet, they can't afford anything. If they don't get money, they're homeless. And if you don't know people that are homeless, once you go homeless, it's really hard to get a job. It basically you don't have any mail address. It's super. The system is not created for you to get jobs when you don't.
One of the things that makes a sanctuary city is allowing people without addresses to get post office boxes. That's one of the things that people like Trump hate. And you know what's crazy in Denver right now? And I could show you videos. In fact, I need to go do a daytime scope and just drive around Denver and show you what's happening on the sidewalks. If I can get down there this weekend, I might. We're going to have to go shovel snow at the church because they were like, we got to move all this snow. Anyway, they're coming from Oklahoma. They've got a lot of Texas license plates, sleeping in their cars. So they're coming from states that don't have any social services because they're fucked. And they come to Denver because it's the closest place they can land this direction. I'm sure they go other directions too, wherever they can find it. But they go west because it's the West where Americans have always sort of realized that, well, you know what? To each his own. And if you need to land somewhere, you got to sleep. I mean, does that make us pinko commies that we allow people to have rights to sleep somewhere? It's a pain in the ass. They sleep in my church. They shit on the driveway. They shoot up in the yard. What am I going to do, man?
I mean, homeless encampments is becoming a very, very serious issue. I mean, several times I've been on here late at night. People, I think specifically from Portland, one guy was, and he's like, I'm in this nice apartment building, but like to go from my apartment building to something 3 blocks away, I have to walk past, 60, 80 homeless people. And I've worked with the homeless people. So you have there's a large disparity of homeless people. Some are simply say schizophrenic and they don't want to live inside a building. They just feel like they'll die if they live inside a building. Yeah. So they're relatively normal, nice people, college educated, fine people. They just won't live in a house. So that's some of them. And of course you've got extremely psychotic. You've got drug addicts. You've just got people that are transitionally homeless. There's a huge array. But of course, the problem is that one psychotic person that robs and stabs somebody. I mean, that's no one wants that, and that of course then creates a huge fear of the homeless. But also, let's be honest. I mean, I wouldn't be comfortable. If my neighborhood all of a sudden became a homeless encampment, and I'm looking out my window at all these tents and people, cooking on, like we have to figure it out. There's got to be a plan. We can't just, it's not as simple as, yes, we should let people camp out on the streets. And it's not as simple as, lock them up either. It's going to have to be solved. But we've had the urban core problem since Reconstruction, and that hasn't been solved either. So I don't know if we have the skills to fix this one. I don't know the answer, but there's got to be some answer that's better than
the Elizabeth Warren. The Elizabeth Warren in me is saying that the answer to this is a serious wealth tax and a redistribution of that wealth into a massive investment in infrastructure and green energy and all of this stuff so that you could put people to work and change the economic landscape that way.
I would argue I'd argue there's also a huge mental health aspect.
I was about to say
there's just, it's not just as simple. I tell you, I've worked in homeless shelters. Most people think it's just a matter of building homes and getting homeless people in them. That is not the problem. I promise you. I wish it was.
Well, in Denver it is, because it's $2,000 for a friggin' apartment. I mean, it's so high end. In San Francisco is the same way. Like,
let me start over.
You end up there because it's warm most of the time, and you can.
Let me start over.
It.
Homelessness is partially due to people that don't have a home. That is true. But you're not going to clear the streets by just simply opening an apartment building and assigning an apartment to each homeless person. They won't. Some people won't accept them. Some people don't have the mental health to maintain them. It's a broader issue. We used to have these mental hospitals. Reagan closed them in the 80s. There used to be people that just honestly need constant care. And so some people need to be institutionalized. Some people need addiction recovery help. Some people there's a lot of problems that distill into a homeless population. So yes, when you're seeing people sleeping in their cars from Oklahoma, yes, those people that have driven across the country, enough money to own a car, enough money to get across country, but now they don't know where they're going to sleep tomorrow, and they don't know if they'll be able to continue to pay their taxes and register their car. Yes, those people need help into housing. And right now, that's going to be a big surge of who is especially becoming homeless right now. I'm just saying, when you get to the big issue, you don't clear the streets by simply building homes for all the people that are on the streets. It just doesn't. There's a group of people that don't fit that model, and they just won't. They'll either refuse or they don't have the ability. Yeah,
I understand that. I work with some of those folks too.
No, I'm sure you do.
And it also, unfortunately, just building an area of homes for homeless. Although it sounds perfect, it doesn't work.
Yeah. They're not all one monolithic group, right, at all.
And that's why the programs, by the way, that's why the programs are so good. It's better to invest in your restart programs, your churches, than, for example, handing money to a panhandler. Because the panhandler, for all you know, is a middle-class person. That's been found many, many times. Or it's a homeless person who's going to use it to buy whiskey, which is what I would use it for. Whereas if you get it to a homeless program, they might, what homeless programs will do is they apply for jobs. They'll have requirements. And as someone, if we were just homeless, the three of us, we would have no problem fulfilling these requirements. We would meet these hurdles. We would hit the goals, and we would continue to progress up through the program. But the people who can't succeed in those programs are part of that other bucket that needs other types of help. It's really absolutely complex. And homeless, of course, are also transient. So if you build the best homeless program in the country, as Marty's saying, if you have the best homeless programs in the country, guess what happens? You get a lot more homeless. Mm-hmm. So it also needs to be a broad approach that people share, so that you don't just create this, if suddenly San Francisco fixed all of its homeless in the next week, well, guess what would happen? Next week there'd be the equivalent number of people back on the street because they would have flooded in from every other community. So it's a very complex and difficult issue, but it definitely needs to be addressed. And especially the new homeless, just the people that couldn't make their ends meet, that is a very serious problem that does need to be addressed with housing options and things. I agree on that. It's just, I don't think that's how you clear the tent city in Portland or the tent city in San Francisco. I think those are bigger issues.
And I think the other issue, everything that Jeff said is 100% correct. The other issue politically, people, I've just noticed that politicians don't want to do things that are super, super messy, because they know there's no perfect solution, and they know that there is a section of people in their party that, unless it's 100% perfect, they will end your career. That's the problem. Like Jeff explained, there is no perfect solution for this. Some people might have to go to hospitals. Some people might have to go to rehab. But once you get the government in place and you start pulling people off the streets and putting them in the hospitals, or you're putting them in homes, in specially built homes or itty bitty, I don't know, like tents, then there's going to be, then the politician knows, yeah, but my people are going to complain that the homes are not big enough, or there's this or that. It's never perfect. So why do I even want to touch this when I don't have 100% solution? It's going to be messy, just like the kids at the border. I saw plenty of news talking about how Joe Biden is holding kids in terrible conditions. They were trailers. I mean, this is the problem with this, is we have to understand that sometimes there is no perfect solution. It's just you have to find the best one. There is no good solution, and you can't think that solution, just give them a home, you'll be done. It's not the way. It's messy. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be people that are still hurting. You can't solve it, and you can't kill everybody because things don't go perfect. And that's unfortunately the Republicans are not even going to touch this issue. No. They're going to point at the Democrats and go, this is your problem. But the problem is the Democrats, there's a section of the Democratic Party that they're kind of.
Don't you think it's interesting, however, though, that we went from talking about kids at the border to homelessness, and all of this is related somehow.
It's it's a process that's impossible to be perfect. It's super messy. There's going to be a ton of issues, and if you pick one by one, you're going to find, like Jeff said, you're going to find that a kid that goes to a sponsor and that sponsor is not perfect, just like you have with people adopting kids now. Right?
Well, the problem is also the billionaire capitalists.
Sure.
And what has happened since Reagan, and we've gotten all the way here from Reagan, is that we didn't have billionaires in the 80s. We didn't have them. Like 2 or 3. There wasn't hardly any. There was nothing. You couldn't have it because of the tax laws, and then Reagan changed that, and now we have billionaires. At the time, we used to look at places like Brazil that had two things. They had billionaires and they had shanty towns.
Yeah.
And we used to look at that and be like, man, look at the side hill. Wow, that's just disastrous, these cities, and then these decadent homes for these rich people. That's what Reagan implemented, was those kind of idealistic policies. And so now we have rampant billionaires that, if you listen to the Bloomberg network and watch some of these business channels, the way they approach government is like I approach a gnat. It's like, just get the fuck out of my way. Well, I am a king and you are in my way.
They are.
And Teddy Roosevelt was able to knock the shit out of some of these people. Elizabeth Warren could knock the shit out of some of these people and institutions if she was unleashed to do it. But that's going to be potentially, in my opinion, this is my prediction, is that this could be the biggest issue, is antitrust and control from the U.S. government side over billionaires or through billionaires. I don't know how it's going to be done, but we're in a situation where, and I've been in congregations that have been incredibly sick. And one of the things in all of them is that you can go through the correct procedure to make decisions. You can have the votes, you can have the meetings, you can take the surveys, you can over transparency it, and everybody takes a vote, and you still can't get the change you want in the system because the right people don't play along. And I think that's going to have to be, is Joe Biden the president of the United States? And what the fuck does that mean anymore? Trump bastardized the position in such a way that he just turned it into a piggy bank for his friends and an enemy to the democracy. I'm sorry. I keep going.
No, you're right. No, you're right. I think obviously what you have to do is, change the tax code. So, hey, if someone wants to give all their employees a raise, that should be a tax shelter. If you really want trickle down to work, just build it into your structure. It's not just as simple as put more money in Jeff Bezos' pockets and he'll employ more people. Although, in all fairness to Jeff Bezos, who everyone likes to pick on, I don't know what the total number of Amazon employees is, and slash 500,000, and that doesn't include the people who make a living as a supplier. There's plenty of businesses that are that are shops on Amazon that's fully integrated, and they ship, 80% of their products to Amazon customers for a full living. So, you could argue he's actually, his money's, he's actually putting money back. He's actually employing a lot of people. There's other people like the Waltons who are retired as the owners of Walmart, and they just sit on their money. They just sit on it.
Sorry,
so
they added 500,000. It's 1.2 million.
1.2 million employees, and again, I mean, I'm just going to speculate the equivalent of a couple 100,000 more employees, I'm sure, through the subcontractors. I mean, you guys buy on Amazon, you buy something, it comes directly from. I buy my furnace filters off of Amazon. They come directly from the manufacturer because they're huge. They're in a big box. It makes sense that Amazon doesn't warehouse them. So that's a furnace filter company that's getting who knows what, 50% of the revenue from Amazon. Long story short, Amazon is a huge company that employs lots of people. So if someone's going to be a billionaire, that's actually a better model than, for example, all these hedge fund managers that are literally speculating with money and just socking away money as fast as they can. I mean, those people are just fat cats getting fat on producing nothing, I would argue. But anyway.
Yeah. And I've always grown up, I think for 30 plus years, I've always felt like the government you can make as like the American dream. When, you come here, you build a company, you can make as much money as you want, and there's no limitations to it. And I've always had that kind of in me. But as the time has gone, especially during this pandemic, it doesn't really sit right with me that there were companies that excelled so fast and so high, like an Amazon, and made so much more money, while other companies are being subsidized by the government to just keep them alive. And it just doesn't make any sense. I think in the 90s, an average CEO made 32 times, 40 times, 50 times more. It's like thousands of times more they make now than a high-level employee. Not even a low-level employee, a high-level employee. It just doesn't – something has gone out of whack where your mid-level and your high-level employees make 1,000 times less than the CEO.
Yeah.
It just isn't like the problem with billionaires is this is not a country of kings and lords, but essentially you create these. And this is the thing that I never agreed with the wealth tax until I was explained actually by Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders explained one thing to me, that he said, the type of money that I'm talking about is it creates lords and kings and these hierarchies. The reason for that is that money will never leave, ever, which means Jeff Bezos' son, he'll be a billionaire and his family will always be billionaires. They will have, just like lords and everything, they will have this forever, and they will always have power in the government because they employ a ton of people and they have unlimited amount of money that they will never lose. Their whole family structure. It is a little bit of a problem that we allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
If someone comes up with, cure for cancer, okay, but it just doesn't make any sense that we don't. That doesn't mean we take their money and then redistribute it. But there should be a tax on hey, you live in this country. This country has given you the ability of making billions of dollars. You've reached a threshold that's much higher, just like I do and we do in our average lives. I'm sure we all are in tax brackets, right? And I'm sure there's a tax bracket. When you reach that tax bracket,
let's deal with this.
You have to pay more.
Article 1, Section 9, Clause number 8. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any oath of office of profit or trust under them shall, without consent of Congress, accept any present emolument, title, and any kind of whatsoever from any king, prince, or foreign state. We are a country that built into our Constitution the idea that we were not going to have nobility running around marauding on this continent, because nobility creates conflict. Nobility creates entitlement, ownership, gang affiliation, for lack of a better term, and therefore conflict, especially if you have more than one billionaire. So that's what billionaires is going to lead to in this country, is this fiat nobility. It's a made up nobility. There's an interesting trend that's happening in cryptocurrency, which is very high democratic. It's very much about each person having their own connection to their own stuff, in open wallets, and no intersection between other people. We were talking about going on. I'm thinking about putting this on DTube. I haven't gotten there yet. It's a new platform. It's similar to YouTube, only it's on the blockchain. There is no censorship other than like likes or dislikes. It's out there, and I don't need the algorithm from YouTube anymore. This is where we're going to move more and more to. I don't need the permission giving from Ma Bell, which is now YouTube, to tell me whether or not I can sing a song out of my hymnal, which, as a religious leader, I do. And some of them I can sing, and then when I sing them or I say the words, it's great. Other times I sing them, and I upload my church service, and within 10 minutes I've got a copyright claim because it's a song that's on a different list.
Yeah,
Wow.
that is nice.
And that's just a little stupid part of my little world. I'm just saying that we're all caught in the matrix of those larger institutions. Google, Apple, their bureaucracies. And I always find this to be interesting, to talk to people who are more conservative, who are like, I just hate the government because I hate bureaucracy. And it's like, well, but at least you can vote for the governmental bureaucracy. A corporate bureaucracy, you can't do anything about. You just either pay them the bill or you don't have their service.
Does anybody? I don't know much about lords and royalty. Do they get any perks? What do they get?
They were the princes. You know what a prince is.
They get land, and they get a
Yeah,
name.
you'd have land. You'd have taxes coming to you that you would then hand up to the guy ahead of you. But you'd have your cut, and you'd maybe have some people to protect you, and depending on your situation, right?
So it's really not much different than what Jeff Bezos is, right? I mean, if Jeff Bezos, how much money does he have now? Like, let's say 130 billion. 130 billion. I mean, imagine his family. That money will never go. So Jeff Bezos Jr., if he has a son, he's going to have 150 billion by then, 200 billion, and on and on and on. That wealth will get pushed down, and it'll never leave that family, making them pretty noble. That's the problem. And no one's saying that they should take it away, but there should be an estate tax for the heavy. And honestly, I don't understand why we are not talking about redoing our entire tax structure. It doesn't make sense to me why we have only 3 or 4 brackets. Why would we only have that many little brackets in the tax system? And why does the brackets hurt the lower and the middle class more than it does the upper class? Because, and the reason I say that is, once you reach the top tax bracket, it doesn't matter how much more money you make, because you still pay the same amount of taxes. There's an argument that you pay no taxes, but let's just imagine you're paying taxes. But once I'm in the top tax bracket, if I make even more, let's say I double the amount of money, quadruple the amount of money I made, I still pay the same amount of taxes. That doesn't work in any of our lives. Mm-hmm. Marty, you made 100 times more money than you did. You're going to jump a whole bunch of tax brackets.
Yeah.
I don't understand why we're not adding more and more tax brackets where you're like, hey, congratulations, buddy. You reached the $100 million tax bracket.
Yep.
Now give me a little more, right?
We have an incredible. When you say that, that's a light bulb going off. That is such an antiquated schedule of money.
It makes it, and it hurts. It hurts the lower and middle class, because I know a family personally where the husband makes good money, they're in the middle tax bracket, and the wife, there is no, she stopped working because the calculation was she can't make enough money to, because any amount of money, if she makes more than $10,000, they would hit the next tax bracket, and she would have to make like 60,000 in order for it to make sense, and it still doesn't make sense because if she made 60,000, she's only really making 20,000. So it basically de-incentivizes her from working because of the tax system. But we're not talking about millionaires. We're talking about the middle class. So you're jumping from middle to higher middle, like that 27 to 30 or whatever. And I don't understand why there are not more brackets. There should be a ton more brackets, and our brackets should be lowered, and their brackets should be higher.
Nate, good to see you, man. How are you doing? Just a quick comment. I hope you're doing well, man. I hope your dad is doing okay too. Sorry to hear that news.
2001 tax brackets for married couples filing separately. Married couples filing separately. The first tax bracket is 10%, which is up to 10 grand. The second bracket is 12%, which is up to 40,500. Sorry. 40. The third bracket is 22%, which is 40 and a half up to 87,000. The next bracket's 24%, which is from 86,000 to 165,000. And the next bracket is, sorry, what?
If I could stop you right there.
Yeah.
3 of those brackets, your life mostly does not change, but what it does is it decentivizes you from jumping up. If you're only jumping up a little bit, it almost makes no sense.
Well, here's where the bracket jumps 8%. When you go from $164,000 to $165,000, your tax bracket goes from 24% to 32%.
Yeah.
Then that goes all the way up to $210,000, where you jump to 35%, which 35% sticks until you hit 314, where you jump into the 37% tax bracket, which is infinite. No matter how much money you make, it's 37%.
Why does it stop?
Well, and the real problem
exactly.
The real problem is too, the 37%. We all know when these people start owning corporations and other things, they have more and more tax shelters. And then there's actually two, right? There's eventually you can apply for your what is it called? Maximum personal tax or something. There's a you can break out of the brackets if you have a certain equation where you can actually beat the bracket a bit, just even if you're not don't have a bunch of tax write-offs. But the truth is, of course, the rich people very few rich people will just cut a check for 37%.
Exactly.
Jeff, were you in Kansas City in 1989, 1990, or somewhere over there? Where were you at?
1990. Yes, I was in high school.
1990. You're in KC.
Yeah.
1990 in KC. I'm just picking a random city in America.
Okay.
$210,000. What did that look like in a household in KC in 1990? What kind of money did those people have to be making? What jobs did they have in 1990 to make $210,000?
My dad made that kind of money. He owned an architecture firm.
And he was
very successful money.
Very successful. Not middle class. That's not middle
class.
We bought the first Acura Legend in 1989. That was the kind of spenders we were. And by the way, interest rates were still at like 15% or whatever coming out of the 80s.
Wow, I'm so glad your answer. It's such a good picture of what kind of a firm did you say?
Architecture.
An architecture firm owner has a successful things buying some cars. Okay, perfect example. In today's society, Ace, what does a family that makes $210,000 really look like? What kind of jobs do those people have? Are they uber successful architecture firm owners, or what kind of households does that look like today?
It's definitely not high class. It's not
right.
It's middle high in some states, but in some places it's really not, because everything is. You can't buy. I mean, when I moved to
where do people in your area who make what kind of houses do people who make $210,000 have? Are they the richest in town, or where are they at?
I mean, you're still gonna. It depends. I live in the suburbs, so
okay.
If you're making $200,000, you could probably afford $1 million house, roughly. Okay. So you could still, Georgia's real estate is not that terrible. So you could still afford a really nice place in Georgia, but not in Midtown. In Midtown, you're going to have to fork up a little bit closer to $1.2 to $2 million. There, when we first moved to Georgia, there were really no $1 million homes. I mean, that was mansions, not.
Well, a critical issue here too is it 200,000 is your salary or 200,000 is your take home?
That is
because 200,000, then you pay 32% taxes. You know, you're making 140 take home, and 140 a year take home is not as much as it used to be.
If I can, I think what Marty, I might be wrong, but I think what Marty's saying is, I know personally multiple doctors or people with doctorate degrees that don't make $200,000.
Absolutely.
But I also know people that don't have any degrees that are running unusual jobs that make more than $200,000, and it creates a problem. I also know lawyers that don't make $200,000. So it creates a problem where these jobs that, like, I have a child. I remember when I was growing up, my parents wanted, it was like doctor, lawyer. Those were, you're going to make it big. Now, not really, because they're like middle class now. So you're not middle to middle class. It used to be doctors and lawyers were not considered middle class. Right? The upper middle or high class. Now, of course, surgeons are still fine, but how many percentage of people are surgeons?
Right.
So it creates basically these higher level jobs that used to make a lot of money. They don't. And on top of that, they leave, and they also have two of my doctor friends don't make close to $200,000, but they do have $350,000 in loans.
Exactly.
Yep.
In order to get to that party, they're carrying a freight with them that they had to accrue along the way to get to that to get into that party of class.
Huge suicide rates, huge debt, very low marriage success rates. Yeah, doctors, doctors. I'm sure lawyers are the same.
Say that again.
The hours are ridiculous. They're working all the time. They don't make that much money compared to what they work and their skill set, because they're unique people. They're very small percentages of people that can make it into medical school. It costs a lot of money.
Ace, there's one for you, man, from Birdman. I don't know where that's coming from, but
I'm sure. I know Santa Claus makes like a good over $80,000 a year. So
it's all tips. It's all tips.
It's all tips. It's all in the tips. But it is.
But no, I mean, we haven't had an honest conversation about our taxes. I mean, Ace, you brought this up, man. This is an important subject because it brings in all these other things, and we have not had the ability. Republicans are the only ones who ever get to have tax issues, because when they get power, they can get people around it and they'll bully their way into something. Democrats don't ever touch taxes since Carter, because Reagan just beat the living shit out of them with this brand of tax and spend liberal. I mean, it just crushed them.
And Jeff, do you still have that tax breakdown?
Yes.
Look at this. I mean, it just came to me because I don't look at the breakdown between the differences between 200,000 all the way down to zero, how many tax brackets there are, or even 200,000 down. How many decentivizing? The Republicans are all about decentivizing people from work, but the tax bracket decentivizes people from working as well, because look at how many hurdles people have to jump and go, this doesn't make any sense for me to work, because if I go from 50,000 to 70,000 or 50,000 to 55,000, I'm not making any more money. I might be losing money. It makes no sense. How many are there roughly?
There's from 200. There's the one that 200's at near the top of. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 brackets from 200 grand to zero.
5 brackets down, decentivizing the low, middle down, and then up, unlimited. No brackets. That makes no sense.
Well, there's 2 more brackets, but
that's it.
Yeah.
And it makes no sense And I'm saying we can make the system even more fair. Also, I don't feel like the tax brackets work with inflation either, because it seems like the differences between, I mean, $150,000 is a lot of money, but not if you make $150,000, because you have bigger expenses and it just keeps on going. I just don't understand why we disincentivize people by our tax system, but once you make over a certain amount, just go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I would say, I tend to agree with you. It might make more sense to say 200 grand down is whatever numbers, right? 15% or something. And then it ramps up progressively from there. More,
Elizabeth Warren will talk about that. I think Nate and Ace are maybe having a misunderstanding here or something. But what I've noticed and what Elizabeth Warren will talk about is that when you do jump up a tax bracket, and then all of a sudden, you have a kid and you have to pay for the child care, that some of these incentives and things end up and really hurting people as they just get a raise, and it changes their life.
Yeah.
And going back to the economic philosophy element of this, you're only subject to the new percentage for the excess.
No, that's not true, Nate. That's not true. Nate's saying the first 50,000 is taxed at one rate and the last 5 is taxed at another.
I don't think
that's not true.
But I just want to say this one piece, that the raw capitalist system approach to our taxes, which has been given to us in many ways by the Republicans, is to say, we don't want to pay taxes at all. But we also want to incentivize getting rich. And so the poorer you are, the more we're happy to tax you, because we want it to look like the great American is the one who's at the top. And it helps perpetuate this myth to punish the poor or to punish the lower classes. And so there's always been this conversation in economic theory from Democrats saying, hey, why can't we, those of us who've made it, reach down and pull people up, create that suction upwards, in upward momentum for people through the tax code? Well, maybe now we'll do it. I mean, this is literally the most progressive thing I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I had this kind of a dream for Obama's administration, but Biden is delivering in record time. We'll see how long it lasts, but this is the kind of economic theory that we're actually, as Biden was saying, that half of the child poverty rate is going to end with this bill. He's relying on the economists. He's rolling the dice, but a lot of the economic stuff they've tried, a lot of their planning is going to work. Not all of it, but a lot of it's going to work.
And if it's not half, it's 33%.
Yep. Well, and Nate was right. Nate was right, by the way. It goes like this. It says, suppose you're single and have a $90,000 of taxable income in 2020. Since $90,000 is in the 24% tax bracket, you'd get a tax bill for 24%. No, your tax would actually be less than that amount. That's because using the marginal tax rate, only a portion of your income would be taxed at 24%. The rest would be taxed at the 10, 12, and 22 rates. So that's 90,000 person. They get 10% rate for the first 9,800, which is $988 of tax. The next 32,250 is at the next rate. So you pay each bracket as you climb through it.
I'm saying, why is anybody under $50,000 a year paying a dime in taxes?
Well, right. Or why aren't they paying 5% or something much smaller?
And fair enough. That's still, but the theory still works. Why is there so many jumps? Why are we even bothering with people under 100,000? Leave that the same. Make it 18%. And then, by the way, 1 extra percent on the top will cover plus some on anything you lose. And you have to start covering these loopholes. And Elizabeth Warren, again, I'm not really for the wealth tax originally, but I'm starting to get around it because people like Jeff Bezos, he's just never going to pay taxes, ever. It makes no sense that during a pandemic, while everybody was losing money, he gained like $20 billion. I mean, how's that possible? While his employee, it just makes no sense that he's taking advantage of a pandemic. And if we don't, if we go after just the corporations, it is a problem, because corporations, especially the ones on Wall Street, they're going to go, well, we are going to have to cut jobs because we have to always. The other issue is, of course, Wall Street, because of the way the system works. If you make money and you make the same amount, let's say you own Target, and Target makes $1 billion in profit in year A, and next year they make $1 billion again, their stock goes down because they didn't beat last year. It makes no sense. So because of that, if you put a tax rate on their corporation, then they're going to be like, well, we're not going to make $1 billion. We're going to go down. Our stock prices are going to go down. We're going to have to figure out how to even this thing out. So go after the billionaires in the end of the day. You're done. You all, the CEOs got paid. Jeff Bezos, you got paid. Now we're going to want a little back because you live in this country, and it happens. And the last point on this, it's amazing because these same companies, they apply this inside of their company as a theory. How? Think about Apple. Apple charges every single product, every single thing that goes through their app store, they charge a fee, even if it's a processing payment. So not that you just, and that's the biggest fight that they're having. And they, by the way, they won. Basically, you download an app, you buy something within the app, and then Apple takes a huge chunk of that money and takes it. And they say, well, you wouldn't get this money if you weren't inside of an Apple app store. And I would argue the same thing. Jeff Bezos, you wouldn't make this money if you weren't in the United States. So we want a little piece of it back because you're obviously bypassing a whole bunch of taxes. That's the problem. So they do this in their businesses, but we can't do this in the government.
And I would say too, the approach of we want a little piece of that back again, it's the wrong approach. It's we're going to leave the taxes for the billionaires to start paying and not taxing the lower classes. Like,
yeah, that makes no sense.
This idea of welfare queen is another piece, another image that Reagan was able to plant into the conservative right in America, that the worst thing in the world was someone who was a taker. They'll tell you that. They'll be like, oh, there are producers and takers, Marty. Let me tell you. And you don't want to be a taker. I hear that in churches. I hear that in a lot of places. And what that means is that it's a value of people by the work that they do. And I mean, it's this idea of welfare queen never occurred. I mean, there's probably some instances where it happened, but the amount of overweight farmers, white, rich, check cashing farmers that I know in Iowa with really just, nice tractors and maybe even a couple bankruptcies, but brand new trucks, they have no problem cashing those checks. But yet they'll listen to a Rush Limbaugh or whatever, and they'll learn all about, those black ladies from Maryland that they've never been to, and they'll hear about people from wherever as welfare queens. Well, that etymology, that builds a whole picture of how we approach society.
Right.
I mean, if you're a wealthy person and you're a business owner, your only true job other than your business is not to pay taxes. That's your thing. But if you work for that business, you don't have an option not to pay taxes, because when you get your paycheck, they take your money. So while the owner, he gets options. It's fair, but all I'm saying is it's not even close to being equal. We're not saying let's make it equal. Obviously, Jeff Bezos created a product. He employs a ton of people. He should make a lot of money. No one is saying that. But we are seeing that it's hugely disproportionate because he's bypassing taxes, because obviously that money is not, how is he making this much if he's not, if he's paying also taxes?
Well, let's pull it a different direction. Let's use our Second Amendment as a discussion instead of the right, which is never explicitly said, I don't think, other than to have property is explicitly said in the Constitution and in the Declaration. But let's go to the Second Amendment. Let's go there. Let's play that game. What if I wanted to start a little side hobby, a collection, if you will, of radioactive material? Right? I mean, that hasn't been played out in court yet. I mean, maybe there's probably some local registration restrictions, but maybe I can find a way to do it. But like, it's my right to bear arms. It's my right to have money. But at some point, the government's going to come in and go, Marty, you can't have that because it's a public issue for you to safely be challenging the governance, the structures of society. You can't have that much. You can't have that tank, or you can't have that missile in your backyard, right? Somewhere along the line, I'd probably get a visit.
Yeah.
And money is probably more powerful than bullets. Why is there not some similar check in our system for the sake of our safety? And I think Teddy Roosevelt would argue very heavily that we had some sort of measure of safety and security to bring. Franklin Roosevelt would talk about parity, which is a discussion where you don't have anyone too high and you don't have anyone too low. It's almost an economic stoicism. What's interesting is John Thune will talk about economic parity for oil companies. He was very upset when the Keystone Pipeline came in, and he talked about parity. They know the word parity. My dad was an old parity farm activist back when he was still alive in Iowa, and would talk about Roosevelt's parity policies, which absolutely gave birth to so much economic boom in the Great Depression to all of those towns. You would see little grocery stores, gas stations. You'd see all sorts of things in those little towns in the 1950s. Those came from the agriculture policies of FDR in the 30s and the 40s. This is an investment, as they've said. We haven't seen this kind of an investment since the last bill of the New Deal. And the ramifications of this kind of money, because what happens when you put money in the lower classes' hands is it rotates through the economy more times. If you give it to the rich people's hands, they might buy a boat or a yacht or a Lamborghini or a building, and that gets spent once in town. If you give it to Joe Schmo, who lives in a friggin' house, who's behind on his mortgage, he's going to pay his mortgage, and then the landlord's going to be able to pay for the new boiler in the stupid old building and maybe part for his car. And then he's going to, the guy that fixes the car is going to maybe be able to pay his bill at the local bank. And the bank is going to be able, that goes through the economy. If you only give the money to the friggin' top, they only produce it through the economy one or two times.
Or they invest it.
Or they just keep it and invest it.
More money.
Yeah,
That's the problem. Is the very wealthy are also very good at making money. I mean, I know a lot of people that are very wealthy, and they have a skill set to make money. They know how to make money. You give them money, and they know how to double it and then triple it, and then on and on and on and on, much better than the average person. And because they don't need the money, they can be a lot more riskier, which means their rewards are much higher. So then the money really never touches the economy really that much. So this is the way to do it. And again, we're also we're teeter-tottering with a whole bunch of people that are going from very poor to no money, homeless, and people that are dropping down in tax brackets at a huge rate. Well, they'll never recover. I mean, if you drop down maybe one tax bracket, you might, but if you go down from 2 to 3 tax brackets, you might not recover. It might be it'll mess up your children. It might take.
You also might not give a fuck.
You also
at this point there's another element of what's happening in this defragging, frazzling of the knit of our economy and our whole system is it's got to have a legitimacy. We've got to believe in it. And when it all starts to fray at the edges, man, and that's what's happening. You watch, I watch people, I listen to people. They're all like, man, fuck it. And that was, I think Trump was there on some of their last ditch hope. You know, I don't know where we all are in that, but like, it's bad, man. Despair catches on.
It's also unfair that we're not even remotely bringing up the fact that the government, run by all Republicans, closed down this country. Mm-hmm. So if you had a job, you no longer had a job because the government told you it wasn't safe and you had to close down. And then the government then did not even want to vote to make you whole. It makes no sense. And when people are saying, oh, it's a handout, it's our money. It's money we put in. We just want it back. I view it as, it's basically like the last year, I shouldn't pay that much in taxes because the country was mostly shut down and they don't need that much. I should get some of it back. It should be this is where the money is going. If you were able to work, great. There were a lot of people that weren't working and the money should start coming back. But the government forced shutdown of businesses and people were laid off. And now those people should be made as close to whole as possible. Of course, you're not going to make them whole, but they need some reimbursements. And I remind you that most of the government, and this is the failure, unfortunately, of the Democrats, were Republicans. The Republican government shut down this country, not the Democratic government, right? Because Trump was, the last guy was Republican. The Senate was Republican. The House wasn't. I'll give you that. But the people making decisions, Republicans, they shut down this country. And I don't understand why the Democrats didn't push back more on the shutdown and they somehow took the shutdown as their own. It made no sense to me because it was never that great of an idea to take ownership of. Because the reason you shut down the country is because of the failure of containing the virus.
But let's be clear. I want to just check you on that real quick. I want to check one thing. No, there wasn't a shutdown. Getting Trump to finally agree to do the shutdown was like pulling freaking teeth. In a little church, my neighbor, who is the principal of the school, people who were in charge of companies, people who were in charge of little leagues and the NBA, and where people had to make literally like a million little decisions to shut down before this government stood up and said, all right, shut down. And of course, the Democrats were the whole time going, we need to shut down because shit's bad. And so it's critical to remember how inept Trump was at the outset of this thing. And how, I mean, it was like, I think the 15th when he came out and he called it a hoax still.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying is, the reason that there were miniature shutdowns and then Trump finally did it is because we were inept of containing the virus. We let it infect way too many people, and people came to him and said, if you don't shut this thing down, we don't know what's going to happen. There's not going to be the hospitals are going to get overrun and the whole system is going to break. It's going to take you forever to recover. But the problem is he did the shutdown. He ran the country, didn't contain the virus, and then somehow let the Democrats take ownership of the shutdown of the system that he mismanaged. That's the thing. The shutdown was necessary, but it was only necessary because it was mismanaged.
Yep.
Well, the initial shutdown, too, was opened up early, if I recall correctly.
Right. Yeah, we're going to shut it down, and we're going to 3 weeks, and then it became on the 13th. Yeah, no, we can't do it. And
so then what happened was we had these rolling shutdowns where basically once ICUs filled, communities were forced to do it. I mean, that's what Wichita did. They did some formal masking and some formal decisions on schools and stuff because ICUs were full. I mean, that's why I think Riverside County might still be locked down. It's because Riverside County, California, the ICUs are still full. I mean, there's no discussion of politics when it's like if one more person gets sick, they die in their house because we have no place to put them.
Right.
Like that's what's caused most of the shutdowns, was just local government saying we're screwed. I think the biggest problem we had was there was no direction from the top. And so we end up arguing with our neighbors over whether or not we should be wearing masks or COVID's real because Trump said basically everything. I'm sure we can find a report where he says it's serious. He says it's killed 115,000 people. Then he says the numbers are all bogus and masks don't help. I mean, we got no unified message from the top. What we should have gotten was unified information, clear information, what was going on. He knew it was deadly. He knew it was going to spread. We should have gotten that information, and then politicians should have made policy decisions based on that information. Instead, we're still dealing with COVID deniers, mask deniers, people that lie and say masks don't work, people that are scared of the vaccine. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And quite frankly, most of those people are just flat wrong. We don't have to fan those people. Someone says COVID's the flu, you're wrong. Masks don't work, you're wrong. It's just over. But now it's at our level on Periscope because there's no universal truth, Now, I think the CDC is going to grow back to where it should be, which is the clearinghouse for all these things. And the president just kind of quotes the CDC, and that we have standard guidelines we can all agree to. But that wasn't the way it was for a year, so people are skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't prepared. You let the virus run rampant, and versus doing targeted shutdowns in hot zones, and then at the same time, when you do targeted shutdowns, you do targeted stimulus. So you go, hey, right. Georgia, you're over 15%. We're shutting down this area. We're paying these people in this area to make them whole.
Right.
And then, so they won't complain, because why would you complain? And then you wear your mask so we can open you up quicker, so we can get that percentage down. I know this for a fact. This works when you set goals and you say, hey, we're at this percent infection rate. When we go down to this percent, this will happen. When you go down to this percent, this will happen. People comply. I work in an industry where it's very strict, and basically they were told, hey, if we're at 10%, you get tested this many times. Once we go down, you get tested less. Once we go down, mask mandates are a little bit lenient, and so on and so on and so on. And people actually see a reasoning to do what they do versus going, shut it all down, open it up. It's all Democrats, don't wear masks. It's all over the place. That's what happens when you don't have leadership and you don't have people making really good decisions based on math. We also
and I got to say, man, we haven't done this. Nobody, I haven't heard anybody talk about this. But I'm going to put this out there. Let's just discuss the fact that what he did from, when was it? Was it January when he first got that briefing?
Yeah.
From the point where he was there, it's a potential to say that the sedition started the day he got that first briefing and started the path of telling the right people to invest, probably doing his own investments. I mean, I was thinking, as Ace, as you were talking, I was thinking Loeffler and Burr had already long since put their shorts in the stock market for the breakdown. Remember, the economy was just, holy shit, here we go. It was happening in February too. Like this, there's a sedition element to what Trump was doing the whole time. With at least I'm going to contend that there seemed to be enough malice in the way he did it to think that maybe he wanted the numbers to grow. Maybe he wanted a death toll. Maybe in some sick, twisted place in his heart, he was cheering for it.
Don't forget, this guy the problem with him is he talks out loud what he's thinking. Mm-hmm. He wanted the numbers to go up in blue states.
Yep.
Right? That was the thing. He said that. He said that he wanted that to happen because it would be helpful for him politically. They did. The original plan was to send out masks to every person during the lockdown. Yeah. They decided not to do that because they said, oh, it's only happening in bigger New York. Why help them? This will only help us politically. They were going to send masks, like 3 masks per person. Can you imagine if the government sent everybody masks during lockdown? I think people would take it a lot more seriously.
Especially coming from Trump.
Exactly. And he's always done that. Everything he does is politically. People are surprised that he got the vaccine and didn't tell anybody. I'm like, why would you be surprised? You know for a fact that there's a nice chunk of his people that are into him that are anti-vaxxers. Why would he say anything to take them away from his thing? He like the Republicans always say, they want a big net.
Right.
Well, he knows where his net goes, and he doesn't want to say anything bad about anybody in his net.
Yeah, Trump could have made millions
I
on the
never
MAGA
understood
mask.
why
He
he didn't.
absolutely
Oh, yeah.
could have done
I
it.
said he should have
Never-
dropped MAGA masks. He should have dropped MAGA masks from airplanes in March. You know.
That would have, I mean, he would have gotten reelected if he would have done any of those things. But because his reaction was so selfish and then therefore had to be protected like every other sociopathic lie.
Yep. He was just hoping 50,000
wasn't happening.
He was just hoping 50,000 people would die. It'd be the same count as the flu. He'd get reelected, and then I don't know, millions of people would have died. In other words, he was just hoping it would start off slower, and it went too fast.
Because that's the nature of this thing.
The way it works with a big R naught, and he wanted to lie, deny, avoid, take no personal accountability like he does on everything, and unfortunately that cost us 500,000 people.
But isn't that the
Probably
part?
I really think America could have been down at something like 30,000 right now. I mean, there's no reason why America had to be 500,000.
I mean, we are spread out, but I don't see why we couldn't have been at 150,000.
I think it could have been a really small number. I mean, we're spread out. I mean, obviously, if it had been handled by an epidemiology team like the 4 pandemics before it, where they didn't even affect America. You know, SARS didn't affect
No, you
America.
get your ass over there. You take it seriously.
Ebola didn't affect America. SARS didn't affect America. I mean, we'd had several pandemics that didn't even come to America.
I mean, all you have to do is just expand testing. That's really all. It's amazing that he was against, going back to Marty's point, it's almost like he wanted it. He did, because he was against everything that helped stop it. He was against masks. He was against testing, which to him made it like testing is what makes it stop. Because if you know you're infected, then you stay away from people and you stop infecting people. If they had put in a ton of money into in-home tests and made them $5 and sent everybody in hotspots tests and go, hey, Georgia, you're at 10% in this area. Here's tests. Everybody test yourselves. And
he kept saying that stupid line. And
more tests, the more
I understand right-wingers hate the liberal media. I hate the same media for holding on to stupidity to protect conservatives. Because every single time Trump was allowed to say the words, if you get more testing, you're going to get more cases. And somebody didn't literally walk up and just slap the shit out of him and say, stop saying that. You're a liar, and we're going to stop you from doing it every time you do it. They coddle him. And they allowed for every day's media to go to bed at night, allowing for him to get by with saying that. When what you're saying, Ace, is had we taken it fucking seriously and said, stop saying that, we need to test everybody. And there wasn't a single Republican who would step up. I mean, it's the same shit we're seeing now in terms of this caucus. We talked about the potential of a split Democratic or Republican Party. That ain't ever going to happen. These people are a iceberg of support for billionaires. Tom Hartman said it on his show not too long ago. He's an old political hack, but I like Tom. And he said, you know, the Republicans are 100% for billionaires and their interests. The Democrats are still about 50-50. Billionaires push us around a lot. Sometimes we get some populist stuff.
We got the tech industry. That's our side. But problem,
billionaires are the problem, and we have to deal with it as much as any of these other things. So,
yeah. And the problem is every single time we wait for these moderate Republicans, I'm even torn because you've heard me plenty of times go, oh, you know, we got to like, you know, be okay with Murkowski's and Collins's and things like that. And then I go like, we need them for votes. And then I start realizing they're never voting with you.
God, it's unreal, man. They're like inhuman.
Think about it this way. The bill that just passed, there are multiple amendments from Collins and Murkowski. Is her name Murkowski?
Yeah.
That were approved. And they still didn't vote for it. And it's like, wait a minute. Why are we like, it makes no sense. You're never going to do it. And that is one reason that you talked about Obama. The reason that the stimulus, they faked them out. They said, we'll do a small stimulus and then we'll just do another stimulus. Well, gee, isn't that what they wanted to do this time to Biden?
Yes, they
And
did.
that's what Biden went, fuck that. I know what will happen. You won't give me a second stimulus. You'll do the same thing. So this time around, if you're giving me a blank check, I'm writing the price. My people told me this is how much I need. I'm writing the price because you're not giving me a second chance on this. And it's going to be too late. And Biden's team knows exactly how many people are in thresholds of being completely out of an economy where it's going to take them 5-6 years. Because if you lose your home, you're done. I mean, it's not going to be a quick recovery. He knew that the Collinses were not going to come around. So screw it.
Yep.
And plus, what's one vote? And they still didn't do it. So this is the problem is I don't understand what we can I don't see a solution because we're not getting any of their votes. We need 10 votes to pass any bill. And the filibuster is not going away. So stop begging for it because it's not going to happen. Because in order for it to happen, we're going to need 2 more senators at least. 2 more. You're going to need to flip 2 more seats. And last small little point, here's what the Democrats need to run on from now on. They need to run on the fact is if the Republicans get elected, they're raising your taxes to pay for the debt. If we get elected, we're raising the higher classes taxes to pay for the debt because the debt thing they need to get ahead of the debt problem. Because they keep on ignoring it and going, the debt. I don't care how the whole thing works. People get freaked out about debt, and it is a winner for the Republicans. And you need to kill their winning ticket and go, oh yeah, the debt is a problem, but we have a different way of paying for the debt. You vote for the Republicans, they're raising your taxes, middle class taxes, lower taxes. You vote for us, we're raising their taxes. Address the debt before the Republicans make you fight from behind, which happens all the time with Democrats.
Yeah.
Fight it forward. And they will not have an ability to fight against it, by the way.
There's another element to this too. And I think about just part of the way my brain thinks. I think in terms of seasons. And I listened to Joe tonight and I heard stuff that I hear pastors talk about where we're 6 months ahead talking about something and nobody's even thinking about it, but you're like, man, you better be on that now. So he lays out there where he wants to be on July 4th. He says, I want to be here by July 4th. It doesn't mean big concerts. It doesn't mean we're quite there yet, but you can go see grandma and you can watch fireworks and we're going to have a 4th of July. Okay. What that means politically is he's going to come out of the 100 days and he knows that coming out of the 100 days, life is still not going to be 100% better.
Right.
So what's going to happen is hopefully if everything works, he can go from that May-June deadline into September, October, or Christmas time. And that once in a while, we will have a moment, hopefully somewhere in that range, where we all look around and go, oh my God, we're back.
Yep.
And there is going to be such an incredible sigh of relief that he's going to continue to get support at that time. Now, bear with me. We're already moving into, Jeff, you changed your thing, but that's okay. We're already moving into, we're on day 50. Normally a president and a Congress is starting to think about re-election very heavily coming into next October.
So
there's a potential that there could be at that time a very joyful America, a very joyful football season, etc., moving into the year 2022. And the Democrats have a very good chance of riding an extended blue wave that is an emotional wave. I've been thinking about this a lot, man. This is going to land, if we get in a good place, it's going to land in the fall. And everybody's going to, for a long time, be appreciating each other, reconnecting, doing what they can. And that's going to go for a while.
To add to that, you're absolutely right. For the first time since this whole pandemic, we in the United States have an ability to compare ourselves with other countries and go, we're doing better. For the first time. That's never happened. For 1 year, we've always been behind. I have people that live in Italy. One of my good friends lives right in Italy, where for months we heard those stories.
Yeah.
And they were terrible. Like, I talked to him. He said people were literally dying on the streets waiting. But Italy recovered quickly. We did not. So for the first time with this vaccine, you can go and show people that are not pro-Biden, but they're not sure. And you go, look at the United States. We have vaccine 150,000, while the rest of the world has done this much. For the first time, we are going to have results that are going to be so obvious that you really can't deny. And I'm starting to see that with people that they're stopping to attack Biden, and they're only on his well-being. That's where they're at now, because they know they can't attack his COVID response. They can't really attack his policies because they're popular. They can't really attack this bill, so they're back on this whole dementia thing. That's all they got. But in the end of the day, I don't think people will care. They'll get checks. They'll get vaccinated. I'm hoping that they're going to create a vaccination card. I've always said, I don't know why they didn't. There needs to be a vaccination card that you get when you have the vaccines. You can go to ballparks and you can go to stadiums.
There is a conversation that's happening right now about a vaccine passport that would have that. There are some negatives to that, of course, where you've got people in and out. But I think we'll probably see something like that, to be honest.
Because how are you going to convince 19, 20, 21-year-olds to take the vaccine? It's going to be very hard. But if you tell them you're going to get this card and you can go to this football game or this concert with this card, they'll get the Johnson & Johnson.
But if we can get over 77 or whatever it is % of the population in the country vaccinated one way or another, 70, then we'll have the herd immunity by vaccination, and that's a different way of getting there.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a huge spike in vaccinations, and then you're going to see a plateau of plateaus, because right now all the people that want the vaccine are getting it. That you're going to reach a population that is not interesting. 20-year-olds, that between 20 and 30 years, those people are not really that interested in getting vaccines. They're young.
Really, I don't find that. I find everybody of all demographics that I know are like, get me my jab so I can get on with life, man.
There's a lot of people that feel like, I'm young, I'm fine. There's also a lot of people that have had COVID and they were like, I'm fine. Why do I need a vaccine? They're not really pro-vaccine. It's not like they're anti-vaccine. It's just they feel like they're young. They've either had it or they're like, I don't want to get it. But you have to create a system that would also boost the economy.
Yeah. I
think if you had a card and I have a card, I can go to a football game. That creates a nice little a boost of, hey, everybody that has their card, they can go to a football game. They can open things up.
Not to put this over your face, but I'm going to go ahead and put the one from Mr. Clean tonight. As a teen who knows more teens than y'all, I think we want to go back to college.
He lives in California, though, so
I know, but I think it's worth saying. I live in the
South, and I'm telling you, younger people in the 20s to 30s not interested in getting the vaccine. I'm just saying.
I added liberal teens to Zach's comment. He knows a lot. I'm sure he knows a lot of liberal teens. I agree with you. I mean, personally, I think it really doesn't. I'm not sure really age is even going to be the divider as much as there's going to be.
Republican thing too.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess that 90% of Democrats are going to want to get the vaccine as soon as they can, and then the Republican side just becomes kind of a question mark. There's probably 40%, like the oldest Republicans, that are probably like, yeah, I want to go get it because it's not making people sick and it can save my life. And then as you get younger and more MAGA side, there's going to be just a certain certain percentage of Americans, maybe 20%, that are just not going to get it. They're just going to say, I'm not getting it. And so getting to 77% when 20% say they won't and a certain number of people can't, that's what's going to start getting interesting is, but quite frankly, if the at-risk group, again, it's one of these things where unfortunately vaccines and public health, we can't just say, okay, well, you're 30% of America doesn't want to get the vaccine. Well, you're the 30% that are going to be at risk. Unfortunately, with vaccines, that's not the way it works. Because when those people get sick and they bring it to us, even though we're mostly immune, and as a group we're pretty immune, when that one maggot brings COVID into your church, 3 people are going to get sick, and maybe they don't die and they only have hospitalization and it's better, but they're still hurting all of us. And of course, then one of those 3 people that's sick could give it on to some other person who, for example, can't be vaccinated. So, like children and things like that. And so,
and we always talk about the death rate. I want to just say this real quick. We always talk about the death rate, but I was in a meeting with a pastor who had it early. He got it early on last March or April. And I just talked to him last week. He's like, I am a long hauler. He's like, I am still completely fucked. He didn't say that. I said that. But he's completely, sick. They were doing like 4 or 5 hospitals are doing studies with him because they're trying to watch all these long haulers that are really just can't shake it. And he was like, just make sure. He was kind of giving us a warning to say, if you have any members in your congregation or in your company or whatever, who have had it, have a little grace with them, because you don't know that some days they're so cloudy. They don't even know they're cloudy. They're just sitting around, and it's a bad thing. And so, again, it goes back to the fact that people have mocked this disease for the deaths or the percentages of deaths versus whatever. Again, it was never about the deaths. It was about how fast it rapidly takes over a population.
They never understood that. I tried to explain that every single time. They would try to compare it to all the other deaths. And I said, wait a minute. If this wasn't a thing, why are the hospitals being overrun? The problem is how fast the infection goes, how many people get sick at the same time, and they all go.
It's like if we were going to argue, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if it's like we were going to argue about Pinto cars, you remember the Pinto that used to blow up when it got hit in the back because they put the gas tank in the wrong place? That's what they're arguing for.
Yeah.
They're like, no, Pintos have a place, man.
Yep. Yeah.
You should be able to have a car that fucking explodes because of the freedom of the driver to have it, and it's like, what? No.
And I just did the number currently off the site. 2.5% of people that get COVID die from it. Now, that's of the people that are confirmed and their case resolves. So there's always going to be people that never got tested. So the question is, did 20% of people that had COVID get tested? If so, then it's a fifth of that. It's 0.5%. Even if that, I would say, is the most right-leaning way to look at it. 0.5% of people that get something dying of it, that's 1 in 200. I mean, that's horrible. And so, yes, people still died of cancer, and people still died of old age, and people still died in car crashes. The point is, this is 543,000 extra deaths.
Extra deaths.
Above all those other things. And, of course, there's a little bit of overlap.
A lot of them by themselves.
Yeah. We're also not counting how many extra deaths on top of that, because people that had heart attacks, that didn't have space, people that have not been, like my mother has not been able to, she has heart issues. She's not been able to go to her doctor.
Exactly.
So there's a lot more deaths that have entered because they weren't supposed to be deaths. We should no longer argue that COVID is a thing. It's surprising, but at the same time, we need to start vaccinating as quickly as possible. And I kind of disagree with. I think the CDC needs to go a lot more broader. Because of the math. The math kind of works. And the math I'm talking about is we're still concerned about the infection, but if you've had a vaccine and you get COVID, there has not been, I might be wrong, but there has not been deaths with a vaccine. There might be, but they're very small.
Right.
So you're basically saying that you're turning COVID into a flu. Which I know I hate to say that, but that's what you're doing. We don't stop this country for a flu. We should start opening it up faster rate so we can take advantage of this stimulus. We have to start opening so people can start getting their jobs, businesses opening, hiring people, getting people vaccinated, and open it up. Because the fact is that the science says if you have two people, they're both vaccinated, they're fine. If one of them
go get them. Yep.
Fine. So open it up, let people travel, and give the incentive of if you're vaccinated, go for it. Just go. It does create a problem with masks, but I think that's a separate problem. But I think traveling and going to ball games, do it. Open it up. Don't the math.
Yeah, and I would say go do it. Still wear a mask because we're still in a pandemic, and you can transmit this thing. You can do. We don't know all the science about that yet, and the new strains. It's very important to recognize that we do not have the science, even for current vaccines, for some of the strains. So we're believing that we've got it, hoping that we've got it. I just pray that we don't have one day where somebody comes in on a news report saying, "Oh fuck." None of them are going to work on this.
It's amazing, Mario. You always read my mind. I was actually about to say, I hope I know the Biden administration has a plan B, but I hope they have a very good plan B, because if in 6 months we get a variant that these vaccines don't protect against at all, and we start all over, we're in a heap of trouble.
Yep.
You're not going to get another 1.9 trillion. You're in real deep crap. So I hope that and the only way you can solve that wave is by testing, and they need to get in-home tests ramped
and that's
up.
part of the bill. We got the money for the testing.
I'm assuming is the plan B. In case things go bad, you start sending out tests to people, hot zones, and going, test yourselves immediately. Do it.
From what I've read through some of the CDC stuff we got through our church stuff was that the summer, there's the acculturation of the testing and what it means to be green and yellow. So like green, I'm vaccinated. Where am I at? How do I fit in with these people? We've started to see some of that CDC language unfolding. From what I've heard, there's going to be a lot more about community testing and tracing in that structure this summer that we aren't even familiar with yet. That's part of why the money getting to fund that thing is a whole deal, because it's going to be a communications I think it's going to be a high level communications package that's going to help say what you said, go back to ball games go back to this if.
And that's why I was thinking there should be a pass, a digital pass, or a card that says, I've been vaccinated. So I go to the NFL, they can do
you're going to get into civil rights issues with that.
I know.
Civil liberties.
I know, but other countries are doing this. I'm not creating a system, but that's what the other country doing. In fact, one of the biggest testing companies, A-Lab, what's the test company? But they actually have an app, Abbott. So Abbott has their built-in app. They already have the system where if you get tested and you pass, you have like a green, a go. They could do the same thing with vaccines that go.
I think the civil liberties side of vaccines has been pretty well explored, and it was exaggerated for a while. Like people were able to just opt out of their vaccines, but I believe like public school districts and other things have been able to say, if you don't have your vaccines, you can't come. Now, there's always going to be exceptions. There's going to be people, for example, who can't for medical reasons, and there's going to be reasons why certain people have to be accepted. But just simply, I don't want to. I'm pretty sure those cases have been explored, and if you don't want to get a vaccine, then you're not allowed to go to a crowded event. The reason the capacity,
come into this kindergarten class.
The reason the NFL is back open and playing is because they're allowed to have 100% if everyone's vaccinated. There's no room for non-vaccinated people in the stadium. I could be wrong, but I guess that would be the question: is that's not the federal government, right? That's
right.
That's a city government for specific events.
Or it's a private industry. It's a private industry.
Right. It's a private industry.
Could also help both. They could do both sides. They could say, well, this section is for vaccinated. They don't have to spread out. This section is for not vaccinated. And we can only take 100 people because we have to spread them out. Tough cookies. You can work the system, but the problem is you need these checks and balances so these other businesses start opening up and making money at the fastest rate so everybody gets employed, because even the NFL employs a lot of people. It's a lot of people that work in these stadiums. you can't get them back employed if the stadium is not full, and you can't get the stadium full if they don't know if you're vaccine. You can work some of this stuff out really easy by having a digital system, a digital check.
But again, it goes back to this notion that you need a federal system, and of all the things that we've learned, you need a federal shot caller to force local, regional, and micro local, shot callers at every single level to tell them how to run their show, because we have a lot of managers and shot callers and city planners and principals and all these different people who had to make these decisions. Hospital administrators had to make decisions. I mean, and there was nowhere to look. And when you looked up, depending on what state you were in, they were like, you know what, we're a state where we're just not going to believe for a couple weeks until it's worse. Like, what the fuck? Wait, what? That's not an option.
Well, surely the party of personal responsibility, they'll all go get vaccinated. And then what could maybe be the policy is you either have to be vaccinated or you have to wear a mask. The people that hate the mask and hate the vaccines, they'll just either have to wear a mask or not.
If I go out in public and I'm working with people, I'm still going to be wearing a mask when I have a vaccine
all the time.
Yeah, I wear a mask
partly because I didn't get a cold this year either.
That also worked, by the way.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, the mask thing is it's not going to go away. We're just going to have to wear masks because you can't wear a thing that says I've been vaccinated.
Well, and even if you've been vaccinated, it doesn't keep you from getting it. So even if you're vaccinated, you can still get it and give it to your grandma or whatever, So we're just gonna have to keep staying serious about it. And I guess it'll take the last of these deniers to get vaccinated, to get our case counts down before we're going to be able to get our freedoms back. And the longer they squawk about, I don't want to wear a mask, the longer it's going to take for us to get back to normal.
There is that popularity curve though, too. Like,
yeah, it will turn.
They were showing it. They were showing where people were at in December to January to February. And even those who were the naysayers, as soon as they knew somebody who had a vaccine or whatever, that number starts to change as well.
Yeah, it'll drop off fast. But people tell me today that the flu vaccine gives them the flu, which is completely impossible. So don't expect it to go away. I mean, there'll be deniers as we go forward. So, but yeah, there'll be social pressure, and I don't know. I just can't help but think when it comes back to it, we needed Republicans to do the smallest thing, and they just said no.
Yep.
Wear a mask. Don't have social gatherings. Stay 6 feet apart. Nope. And they've drug us into a year of this crap because they wouldn't do it. And so, I really don't want to hear shit from them again about if this had been World War II, they would have been wearing zoot suits and exceeding their ration. I mean, they're cheaters. They're cheaters, and they don't follow the guidelines, and they didn't help us get through this. And as far as I'm concerned, their name is Mud, and they've all got a big hill with me because they were wrong and they messed up. And they're still messing up.
And they turned what was the potential of being a camaraderie situation for patriotism into gathering in boat shows and overcrowding beaches as patriotism. And that shit's still there, guys. I mean, it's still.
Yeah, I'm super confused by the whole, and it's highly it's upsetting. I know we have a lot of people that I'm not a fan of Republicans, but we need two parties in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is I have friends that are Republicans and they're done with politics. They're like, yep. I'm done because I only have one option. That's the Democratic Party. I don't agree with them on a lot of stuff. It doesn't matter what. I don't agree with them, but I don't have a second option because the other option is nuts.
Yep. So I don't want my name affiliated with them.
I don't want the whole thing because they're nuts. So I'm done with, and on top of that, if you're a conservative Republican, you're also done with the Republicans because they're definitely not conservative on money or anything like that. So they went against, Donald Trump is not a conservative. He went against everything that would make that happen. So you're not into that either. So you basically have no party and you're basically done. And because of that, we can't get bills done either because the other side is only playing opposition. And they proved themselves. I've told this joke, my favorite thing from it's that whole thing where, if the movie gets said in the name, remember that Peter Griffin where he goes, there it is. Where
yeah.
you kind of tell yourself they are so over the top on opposition that somehow this whole royal family thing is super confusing. How is it that the Republican Party are pro-royal family?
Right.
You guys had the Tea Party. You're against the royal we are all against that type of government.
But back to nobility. Back to nobility.
Right? But it's amazing. They're so opposition that they even go against their core beliefs to go, oh, no, screw it. The other side is doing it. We'll jump to this side no matter what. They have no more limits on where they go because everything is opposite. Whatever they go with, I don't remember the last thing where we all go, oh, we got to agree on that. Actually, I do remember 9/11 was the last time I remembered where the whole country went, screw this. Other than that, no, it's gone worse and worse. There's nothing we agree on. Zero things where they go, they make a point. We really do need to fix this one thing. COVID, 500,000+ deaths, no agreement.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
It is.
So you're never going to get any of these bills passed. I have no idea what Joe is going to do, but I can tell you this: Joe is a master at his job. This is why you need a true politician that knows how it works. He is masterful if it doesn't. When the 1.9 trillion came out, I was on the show and I told everybody on here that the $15 was put in there just to be taken out. It was put in there as a chip just to be taken out. Now, I know Zach's not going to be happy, but here's the fact. Joe knew this. He knew he didn't have enough votes, and he knew Joe Manchin was going to be a pain in the ass. So if you came to Joe Manchin with 1.9 trillion with no $15 to take out, what do you think Joe Manchin is going to want to take out next?
You would have had about a $600 billion package.
Exactly. So what did he do? He put in there things that, well, maybe it passes, but probably not. So I can take things out. This is actually how you negotiate. Yep. You ask for a lot, and then you throw in there things that are a little bit, I can get rid of them, and you take them out, and you get 1.9 trillion without a problem.
And it takes months to make the play.
He
knew in October when he laid it out or whenever.
He played them like a fiddle.
Yep.
And I don't like, and on top of that, just to make the progressives super happy, he let Bernie Sanders run the $15 and said, hey, if you can get it passed, you're the champion, go get it done.
And he's made room for those who care about the $15 an hour wage increase, minimum wage increase. By doing it that way, he's actually put it on the landscape in a way that it really could pass in the next 2 years.
Yeah,
but it's not going to pass in the same way that it was going to do this. And
on top of that, I've actually talked to some people. Understand that the $15 an hour in the bill was crap. It wasn't a good thing because in order to make it, it has to be budget friendly. So they basically, what they did is they were going to put $15 an hour, but it would only happen in 6 years.
Right.
So you can't put a plan that happens after the next election because if you don't win the next election, it's gone. Yep. You have to do $15 an hour to reach by the end of the cycle where the Republicans can't come in and axe it. It'll be too late because the Republicans can't come in and go, you guys are getting $15 an hour. We're moving it back. So Joe Biden is masterful on how he does these plans. My interest is which plan is he going after next? Is he going to go after voting or infrastructure? I'm assuming infrastructure.
HR1 is next, I think.
I don't think so. I don't
because you have to get it done now. Those are the things you have to get done now, and then it's immigration.
You got to do infrastructure next. I think because you need people. People are going to be opening up the country. You need people to work.
So, okay, you're probably right, but let me tell you something that I want to foresee a couple of things coming. that have not been part of our world for quite some time. There's some new sheriffs that are going to be in town, and they're going to start making news. In the last 4 years, our breaking news has always been around Donald Trump, and it was several times a day based on his mood, his hairstyle, and his fake tan. What we're about to see very soon, and I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen soon. You're going to start to see cabinet members who are incredibly competent making their own news on the daily. Mayor Pete, Secretary Pete is already gutting things in the transportation department, and you're about to see scandals that are going to be uncovered. You're about to see new ideas that are going to basically, I think, Ace, based on what you're saying, start laying out a picture of the transportation element of the infrastructure package. You're going to see HUD. You're going to see Merrick Garland going to work. That's going to change the politic in this country too, to see administrative excellence and competence deriving different programs. It's going to be a new time. And I've just kind of noticed, I'm like, oh, these guys are all starting to get in place.
And here's the reason that I don't think you're going to do HR1 next is
okay.
You can't.
You could be right.
Here's why. You have to win that one. You have to pass it. See, Joe Biden's not dumb. He knows if he doesn't pass it, they're going to lose big. And he knows they can't pass it right now because they're not getting rid of the filibuster right now at all. They can get filibuster reform. How do you get filibuster reform? See, if you put an HR1 in there and it fails, then you go to Joe Manchin and go, you see, it didn't pass. But then you can't vote on it. It gets weird. So what do? You go infrastructure, while the Republicans have always been like, oh, we're going to work with you on infrastructure. You get Joe Manchin and go, hey, Joe, last chance. Go out there, go to the Republicans and say, we're going to work with you with infrastructure. Let's see what they do. And when the Republicans come back and go, no, we're not working with you on infrastructure, then Joe Manchin will come back to you and go, we need to do filibuster reform. He's not going to get rid of the plan. It's not. But filibuster reform will work, and we have proof of that because the Republicans tried to filibuster this bill by doing a whole bunch of amendments. They ran out of gas. Yep. See, the thing is, if you go back to the old rules, it might work. I'm not saying it will, but it might work because the opposition can't go on forever.
Right.
They can't debate it forever. And you have to put your foot down on HR1. You have to win. And the only way you're going to win is you go, you want a filibuster? Fine. Talk for hours and weeks and weeks and weeks. And let the people in the public see you filibustering this thing for 3 weeks and see how ridiculous you are. And then either you come to the table or Joe Manchin goes, you know what, I'll get rid of the thing. I think you could do it. But HR1, you have to win. And the only way you do it is you put a plan that you know Republicans will work on. And by the way, you don't technically need the Republicans on the infrastructure plan because it's a budget plan. Yep. They can do the same thing they did with this one. So I think
and you have to imagine that they will. They will do that again.
Yeah. But that's how you get Joe Manchin over. And you go, listen, they didn't even work with us on infrastructure. You want them to vote on a voting act, but you have to win the voting act. And you can't put the voting act without filibuster reform at least. At least.
And Zach gives us the shout out of saying, be sure to call it the John Lewis Voting Act because that's what it's called. And HR1 gives people the room to disrespect it. And I appreciate that because
you're right.
This is a big deal. And Ace, you're absolutely right. It has to pass. So you're probably right. You're probably right. The nuance, I don't claim to know the ins and outs.
I love these tactics. The tactics are
the tactics are critical, and you have to know when to pounce.
Joe Biden, he really is.
Well, along with your theory, I just read an article yesterday saying that, the plan is that Joe will be planning to work with the Republicans on the next few bills. The headline saying, making Democrats upset. But the fact is that very well may be the next case is to say, we've sussed out in 50 days where their hearts and willingness is. We know they're not willing to do anything.
They're not doing anything.
Okay. Nothing. So we lost some of the bite we could have had in this bill by playing ball with them. Okay, we learned our lesson. Next, you said you're going to be with us on immigration or infrastructure or whatever. Put your money where your mouth is. Let's make a big show of it. And then they're not going to do it again.
Here's my prediction on the infrastructure. This is the easiest prediction. If I can bet on this, I would bet the mortgage. Green New Deal. That's what's going to happen. They're going to go back and go, oh, no, we can't pass this infrastructure. It's just the Green New Deal. That's all. I can see it a mile away. This is what's going to happen. Remember this day. It's 12:30 a.m. This is what the Republicans they're going to do. They're going to say, this is Joe Biden's way of passing the Green New Deal through an infrastructure package. We're not going to agree on it. And they're not going to agree, and it's going to be very popular on their end. And then Joe Manchin is just, they're going to pass it through the same way they did the reconciliation.
Yeah.
And then I think they'll go to Joe Manchin and go, we need filibuster reform at the very least, and they'll do it. And just to finish one thing, Mr. Clean said, the reason that Joe Biden is not for removing filibuster, if you have noticed, Joe Biden is not for things he can't get. If you notice that. He wasn't really for the $15 in the beginning because he knew he wasn't going to get it through the parliamentarian because he probably wrote the rules. He's been in the Senate all his life. He knows the rules like the back of his hand. He doesn't go for things he knows he can't get, and he knows he's not going to get rid of the filibuster. Why say, I want to get rid of the filibuster and take the loss? It's a terrible strategy. It's terrible because you're taking a guaranteed loss. Get your wins. Get a filibuster reform and see where it goes.
That's a good comment. Hey, Mr. Cleet, Ace, you're wrong. Green New Deal was already passed and froze Texas. I like that.
Fair enough. But I'm just saying, I know how the Republicans work. And
no, you're right. You're absolutely
right. You're absolutely right.
Not one vote is going to come out. And we also know that, in theory, to be fair, to a little bit to the Republicans, the infrastructure plan is going to have a lot of new green stuff in it. So it's very easy to add 1+1. They're going to put stuff in the infrastructure plan because they need charging stations and they need all that. So it's very easy for them to go Green New Deal. Just with one point. I'm not a genius. I just know how the thing works.
Well, and the narrative will continue to grow of the tax and spend liberals. They just blow money. Where's the money coming from? That will be the retort. You'll hear Hannity and others that singing that chorus. Where's the money going to come from? And they remember those lines just a month and a half ago. It's amazing how those songs come right back to them as soon as Trump's not in power.
You do, but Ace, how does $15 get past? That question.
Let me see.
I can predict the future again for you.
Here we go.
I can predict.
But Ace, how does $15 get passed, assuming we have a filibuster?
The Democrats are going to run in 2022 on getting rid of the filibuster and passing $15. That's what they're going to run on. They're going to say, listen, we tried. We couldn't do it. So we need 2 more senators, people, to get rid of this thing. Because
I was thinking about that too the other day when Roy Blunt
run on something.
Roy Blunt announced that he was going to resign, they now have 7. So we know that there are 7 Republican senators not running for re-election next time. And of course, on the right hand side, we know that they're all going to, because they're not running again, we know they're probably going to be MAGA crazy turds who are completely insane. That's an assumption, man. That is such an assumption that MAGA doesn't implode and create such a detriment further than it is now, from between now and then.
We don't know anything about the insurrection.
And I would assume that there will be a Democratic ass kicking of those people if we get that far and everybody learns the word the filibuster in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
I think if the number 7 is going to become really magical to people. They're going to be like, wait a minute, we could have 57 senators.
Maybe 50.
I mean, I'm just saying that's a freaking switch, man. And there's others that could go too. There's others that are going to run who are actually going to be weak. So there could be. I'm telling you that the emotional wave of coming out of COVID is going to hit an election cycle at a time that normally people aren't looking. Normally people are not looking at a Congress to do much at the end of the Congress. we're just going to be coming back into action as a nation at the end of a Congress. It's going to be a weird fit.
Yeah.
I think how Merrick Garland spends his time. I think, like we said, how all these different cabinet level people, what they find in their organizations and what goes public, what's accomplished from those different departments. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think all it takes is the Republicans filibustering something like $15 an hour. They use a filibuster to kill it or whatever, and people hear, wait a second, it didn't even get voted on. Like that kind of thing could really cause a major problem for them in 2 years. Not to mention what we find out about this insurrection, how many more dumb videos Bobart makes, how many more stupid clips there are of Green talking nonsense, how many more times Ted Cruz shoves his foot all the way down his throat. I mean, these people are just laying down in front of the political machine. And I mean, if Beto runs against Ted Cruz next time, I mean, my gosh, he's gonna have AOC on stage giving him high fives. It's gonna be like getting dunked on. And Ted Cruz was a senator that left the state during while people were freezing to death. It's a slam dunk. So these people, the more and by the way, by the time those 2 years comes up, Donald Trump could be in a criminal trial about rape. I mean, this party has nothing but downside. I think we were at the beginning of where the downside goes because they didn't get Trump out of the party. Is number one. They're tied to him. I mean, as things start coming up, as this insurrection gets more and more worse and investigated, they're all tied to him, and they can't untie from him now. They were there, they got attacked, and now what are they gonna do? Especially if the insurrection proves to be a pretty big deal. They're just gonna kind of go, oh, well, I didn't realize it was such a big deal. Well, they were in your office. They had their feet on your desk. You didn't know it was a big deal. I mean, it's just to me, there's only downside. I mean, to me, the political ads have written themselves, and our boy Hallie from Missouri, he bashed McCaskill for not voting for a female Trump appointee. He's voted against every single Joe Biden appointee. Mm-hmm. So I mean that ad rides itself. Hallie criticized McCaskill for not voting for a woman while he voted against a transgender, a woman, the first person of color to be the Secretary of Defense. All these firsts that Biden's put in, he voted against all of them. And he criticized McCaskill for voting against one woman.
All while fist bumping and power fisting.
It's just,
all of the insurrectionists.
Love it.
And we still don't know which contact. The good news is I think the Democrats have a really, really good chance of adding on to the Senate. But the $15 an hour will help the House. The House is a problem for the Democrats to keep because the House is very it's very radical. It's supposed to be a lot more radical than it is, as we can see.
Right.
But you need these fast ideas and Democrats going into town and going, we're going to pass $15. It doesn't even matter if they're not part of it, but they'll run on $15 and getting rid of the filibuster. And all the Democrats need to do is put a very popular bill that is popular all over the country and let the Republicans filibuster it. Gun reform could be one of them because background checks, but you have to market it correctly and do background checks. Background checks are very popular. But you need a bill. I don't know if guns is a good bill, but you need a bill that's very popular. Maybe the infrastructure, but the infrastructure is kind of a weird, something that's super popular. Let the Republicans bite on the debate again, like they did with the 1.9 with the stimulus package. It's going to come back to haunt them. But what the Republicans are banking on is in 2 years, in a year and a half, people will remember. So you need one more big one that's very popular that the Republicans will filibuster, then you can run on it. I think that
let's wrap it up. We're getting late tonight. Let's do predictions. If there are any predictions, this is a good time to do some. I know. Sorry. Let's do them. I'll go first. That it will be between Wednesday to Wednesday around Easter, which is 2.5 weeks away. Okay. Between the Wednesday before and the Wednesday after Easter, there will be an announcement about some high-level Trump people getting rolled up. The story will land then. In the Wednesday to Wednesday around Easter. That's my prediction.
That's a good one because you stole my idea. I was going to predict that in the next 3 weeks, same time, Roger Stone is going to be arrested.
Oh, that's great.
And that's going to be interesting. But I mean, I don't know if but I think Roger Stone is in some deep crap, because I cannot sit here and believe that Roger Stone was not planning some stuff with the. There's another Oath Keeper that just got arrested today that was Roger Stone's driver.
Oh, wow.
Suspiciously. So there are now 2 Oath Keepers that were part of the insurrection that were all around Roger Stone, and he's the mastermind of planning. I'm assuming he's going to get arrested. He won't talk because he's a nutcase. But,
wow.
boom.
Those are really good predictions. I don't know if I have one to match that kind of
Fair enough.
level
That's
of
fine.
prediction.
That's fine.
I will say one thing to keep in mind is one of the reasons why cases have dropped off really well in the last few weeks is that cold snap. So when it got cold, everyone stayed home and socially distanced and didn't go out and didn't go hang out at their bar and all that. And that's one of the reasons why cases dropped so well there for that cold snap.
Wow.
So something to just think about it, showing, how, real life things do have, the idea of staying home orders, for example, can actually help stop a pandemic. So.
Well, and for all of you out there who are not in Boulder, Colorado, enjoy not getting between 2 to 5 feet of snow. And
we're supposed to get rain for 3 or 4 days. I guess that's going to be all snow for you, huh?
They said 2 to 5 feet, and up in Estes Park, they're talking about 91 inches of snow starting tomorrow through Sunday. Worried about houses falling in. And so I'm getting my game plan for having my ladder and pulling snow off my house. And it's really more about trees. I just hope we don't get like a bunch of ice beforehand and then everything gets heavy, and then all that snow. That'll be bad if that happens, but we'll see.
Although I think if you get the ice first, the ice doesn't stick as well to the trees. The snow doesn't stick as well to the ice that's already on the trees.
True, but I'm thinking more about my roof at that point when I've got a frozen ice roof and then 3 feet of snow or 5 feet of snow.
Yeah,
just it's one of those.
There's probably some trick like running a yellow line down the ridge of your house and then in the middle of the storm drag it off one side or something. I don't know.
I was thinking about putting a tarp on one part of it and then trying to pull it off like a couple feet in, but we'll see. I don't know.
dragging the tarp off should work.
Yeah.
I guess if you ran strings over the top, you could run a tarp all the way over and then drag it off one side and then drag it back up on top.
Not a bad idea. I got a couple.
Of course, you might find out that it takes you a freaking tractor to pull the tarp off after.
Yeah, and there's 3 feet of snow on it, then I've got to just a tarp on my roof, which will be nice.
I mean, that could help so that it doesn't freeze up under the shingles.
Is this racism? A bunch of white frat boys called snow? Yeah, that's wonderful. In Boulder, of all places, as you probably saw last weekend.
I saw some of that footage finally. Yeah,
fucking bullshit, man.
Ridiculous.
People are pissed. So anyway, all right, everybody, have a wonderful night. Thank you for being with us on America Heals. Please forward, like, and
subscribe,
share, subscribe, move over to the YouTube station, and I'll have more data for us next time. That's my priority, is to have some real clear directions as to where we're heading after this is all over on Periscope. So thanks for being with us, and